Hello everyone, if you like this audiobook and want to listen to more, please consider subscribing, and if you like this video, like it as well that it enjoy. 41. Fu, let's go to school. The Fallen Knight arc begins. Chapter 41. Fu, let's go to school. The Fallen Knight chapter begins. The vast, strange hall was as silent as ever. The dispute between Arthur Pendragon and the Soma Familia ultimately ended without resolution due to the intervention of their patron deity. Considering there was still some time until the next expedition, he simply greeted Loki and set off on his journey once again. This time, he first accepted a quest at the guild to collect materials from the middle levels, then immediately opened a dimensional gate upon arriving at the middle levels. Arthur stepped out of the light gate from the dungeon world, and his vision suddenly cleared, two distinct paths of light extending into the unknown depths. The one on the left should lead back to the Demon Slayer world he had visited before. The one on the right, however, led to a brand new world. Before he could make a choice, Fu jumped off his shoulder, urging him to depart for the new world. Arthur bent down, reached out, and picked up the pure white beast that was tugging at his pant leg, his tone subtle. "Hey, Fu, aren't we on the same side? Why do I feel like you're so invested in that mysterious voice's mission?" Fu, carrot. Seeing that Fu wouldn't answer him, Arthur had no choice but to step towards the light gate on the right. As expected, the time axis was still at the extreme compression ratio of 120:1. However, when Arthur silently thought about needing more information about the mission objective, the mysterious voice actually answered the question. Threatening the world's composition, detrimental to the world itself, difficult to eradicate from the world. Great, that was as good as saying nothing. Arthur was almost amused to anger by the mysterious voice. What good could such vague hints be? It seemed he would still have to find out on his own. Arthur no longer relied on the mysterious voice for help, carried Fu on his shoulder, and walked into the light gate, embarking on a new journey. Dump truck special divider. Skyscrapers pierced the clouds like steel giants, their mirror-like glass curtain walls reflecting dazzling neon, saturating the bustling streets with vibrant colors. Arthur stood by the sidewalk, his gaze sweeping over the hurrying office workers, the sound of a street performer's singing drifting from afar. The giant screen at the end of the road flickered, playing the most popular news of the moment. Welcome to our latest report. Today, Her Royal Highness Stella Vermilion, the second princess of the Vermilion Kingdom, has arrived in Japan. Her Royal Highness Stella, who enrolled in Pojun Academy with the highest scores in its history, is the strongest genius magic knight. Next, please. Arthur withdrew his gaze, comforting himself with a wry smile. All right, at least I know there are some differences in the countries here, and Magic Knight, is magic conduction completely open here? As a newcomer, he couldn't analyze any more information, so he simply held up Fu, who was lazily perched on his shoulder, and teased. It's decided. Fu, quickly help me find the key figures in this world. Fu, Omega filled down pointing triangle. Fu was displeased. Fu raised a paw. The pure white beast's counterattack was exceptionally sharp, and Arthur, touching the bloody scratches on the back of his hand, suggested with a sheepish look. All right, I apologize. How about I treat you to cream puffs? As he spoke, he held up a flyer he had just received, which depicted a delicate and tempting, adorable pastry. Fu, lozenge Omega lozenge. Thank you for your patronage, please come again. Arthur took the bag with the cute pastry design, intending to turn and find a corner to share it with Fu, when a slightly regretful voice came from behind him. Hello, please give me a signature cream puff. I'm so sorry, the last signature cream puff was just sold. Would you like to try our newest product instead? How could this happen? He looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a chestnut-haired girl in an unfamiliar academy uniform standing at the counter, a hint of disappointment on her face. The girl had an heroic face, with a touch of mixed-race delicacy, and thick glasses concealed the sharpness of her eyes. Arthur's gaze lingered on the girl for a moment, she seemed to sense it and turned to look, her eyes precisely falling on the pastry bag in his hand. After a brief moment of distraction, the slightly clumsy girl quickly recovered, her gaze moving away from the pastry bag. Instead, she sharply scrutinized Arthur, clearly sensing his unusualness. For the people of this world, magic conduction power is determined by talent. Humans cannot actively increase their magic conduction through diligent practice, it is a power that determines one's destiny from birth. In her perception, the magic conduction radiating from Arthur's body was as vast as the sea, tens of times greater than hers, practically a magic conduction torrent in human skin. The disappointment of missing her beloved pastry was instantly replaced by wariness, and the girl's expression became solemn as she spoke in a deep voice. Tudo Tuka, 3rd year at Hagen Academy. May I ask if you are a newly appointed representative from another academy? Arthur raised an eyebrow, teasing, why do you ask? Maybe I'm also a member of Hagen Academy. Tudo Tuka smiled wryly and shook her head. If you were a member of Hagen Academy, our performance at last year's 7-Star Sword Art Festival wouldn't have stopped at the semifinals. 7-Star Sword Art Festival. Arthur's eyes flickered slightly. This unfamiliar term made him vaguely touch upon the mission's context. Ring, ring, ring. A sudden phone ringtone sounded, and Tudo Tuka, who had been about to say more, looked flustered, fumbling to pull out her mobile device. After the student council member finished their report, she looked up again, only to find that Arthur, who had been standing not far away, had already left. He left. If he participates in this year's 7-Star Sword Art Festival, we'll probably have to end with regret again. At the corner of the street in the distance, Arthur unwrapped the pastry bag, took out a freshly baked cream puff, and handed it to Fu. He himself looked up at the giant screen in the mall, which was still playing the morning news, and said with interest. Hagen Academy, 7-Star Sword Art Festival. Arthur softly uttered these 2 words, a playful smile curling at the corner of his lips, and held up the pure white beast. Fu, let's go to school. Fuwu, Fu, her mouth full of cream, tilted her head in confusion. Hagen Academy, chairwoman's office. Shinguji Kurono, who had just greeted Stella, unbuttoned her suit jacket and slumped decadently into the high-end office chair, sighing. Please make yourself at home, princess. I'll arrange your dormitory right away, but I need a few minutes to rest first. Stella frowned at Shinguji Kurono, her tone questioning. Is the situation at Hagen Academy really that bad? So bad that even you, as the chairwoman, can't solve it? How do you want me to solve it? Shinguji Kurono skillfully pulled out a cigarette and lit it, taking a deep drag before explaining. The previous high-ranking officials at Hagen Academy were all parasitic worms who just occupied their positions without doing anything, never seriously developing the students' potential. And I only took office this year. I don't even fully understand the situation within the academy yet, so what can I do? Stella crossed her arms over her chest and let out a light hum of dissatisfaction. I know, even if it's just me, it doesn't matter. The title of 7-Star Sword King will definitely be mine. Shinguji Kurono looked at Stella with amusement, finding her confidence at this moment perfectly reasonable. The 7-Star Sword Art Festival is a martial arts festival jointly organized by the 7 Magic Knight Academies in Japan. The 7-Star Sword King is the strongest title, only awarded to the champion who defeats all other participants. In previous 7-Star Sword Art Festivals, a rank B Knight could already dominate the competition. It was perfectly reasonable for Stella, a rank A Knight, to declare that she would win the championship. I look forward to your performance, princess. Beep. A notification sound came from the mobile device on the desk, and Shinguji Kurono looked puzzled, reaching out to press the switch and asking. What is it, chairwoman? An urgent message has come from the admissions office, stating that you must review it personally. An urgent message from the admissions office? Send it to my computer. Yes, it has been sent. Shinguji Kurono tapped her finger, and the email opened. A perfect admission test report immediately caught her eye, making her instantly forget the cigarette between her fingers. Name: Arthur Pendragon. Age: 18. Nationality: none. Attack power: A. Defense power: A. Magic conduction power: A. Magic conduction control: A. Physical fitness: A. Luck: S. 1 comments 0 vote, 42. The pinnacle is upon entering school. 1 sentence can cripple the chairman. Chapter 42. The peak as soon as you enter school. The chairman was destroyed with just 1 sentence. Magic Knights, or rather, Blazers. They are powerful beings capable of transforming their souls into weapons, thereby unleashing various supernatural abilities. Based on the numerous extraordinary abilities displayed by the Knights, the International Alliance has meticulously categorized the data. The classification standards range from rank A to rank F, decreasing in order. Rank S is the only exception. It not only represents power beyond rank A but also signifies that the upper limit of its abilities cannot be accurately measured by existing means. At this moment, Shinguji Kurono stared intently at the computer screen, her expression as focused as if she had discovered a priceless treasure. The test results were impeccable, even more outstanding than Princess Stella, who was by her side. Is this a new student this year? No matter what, she had to recruit him into Hagen Academy. However, Shinguji Kurono quickly noticed something amiss. Arthur Pendragon, this was clearly a name from another country. But no country would be foolish enough to voluntarily give up a rank A knight. If it weren't for the Vermilion Kingdom not being able to find a magic knight stronger than Stella, and this princess's unusual obsession with becoming stronger, coupled with some of her personal connections, there would have been no chance to poach such a powerful ally. A rank A knight with no nationality. Shinguji Kurono took a deep drag from her cigarette, the pleasure brought by the nicotine quickly helping her make up her mind. She raised her hand and pressed the mobile terminal on her desk. Have this new student come to the chairwoman's office. I have some questions I need to ask him first. Received. We will arrange it immediately. After ending the call, Shinguji Kurono looked up at Stella, who was full of curiosity, and explained with a smile. Princess, please wait a little longer. Perhaps we've found a teammate who can keep up with you. Stella's eyes lit up. A rank A knight. Shinguji Kurono nodded proudly. A rank A knight. Soon, Arthur arrived at the chairwoman's office, led by a staff member. The first thing he saw upon entering was Stella standing in the middle of the hall. She was wearing Hagen's exclusive black and white female uniform, and her long red hair, as dazzling as flames, was extremely striking. Her pupils, of the same color, were filled with fighting spirit, and her posture was tall and straight, radiating heroic spirit, like a Valkyrie stepping out of Norse mythology. Arthur had already known her name and appearance from the morning news report, but it was only upon meeting her in person that he truly sensed it. This princess was indeed very strong. Shinguji Kurono, sitting in her office chair, flicked away some ash and gestured with her hand. Arthur, don't be nervous, just sit anywhere. Since you are a rare rank A knight, I would like to ask you a few questions on behalf of the school, if that's okay. Arthur calmly sat down on the left sofa and nodded, saying, Of course, please ask. Shinguji Kurono carefully scrutinized his face, her eyes full of doubt. Arthur, where are you from? Although not filling in your nationality doesn't affect your enrollment at Hagen Academy, I certainly don't want to receive anyone from the rebel army. Rebel army? Arthur subtly looked at the serious-faced chairwoman, his tone enigmatic. I didn't expect such a direct question. Then, chairwoman, do you think I would be a member of the rebel army? No. Shinguji Kurono crossed her hands, supporting her chin, and emphatically denied her previous statement. The rebel army has always been suppressed by the International Alliance, they can't amount to much anyway. If a rank A knight appeared within their ranks, they would absolutely be reluctant to send him out as a spy, let alone to Hagen Academy. Her words had a hint of self-deprecation, but given the current situation of Hagen Academy, it was indeed not worth anyone's attention. Arthur nodded in agreement and said, You make a very good point. Do you have any other questions? Shinguji Kurono's eyes held curiosity. Naturally, there are still some, for example. What is your noble art? What series does it belong to? Noble art is the official term for a blazer's weapon after they transform their soul into it. Series is a general classification people make for blazers who master different extraordinary abilities, totaling 4 types. Physical enhancement type. Blazers who purely enhance their physical functions with their abilities, relying on superhuman physique to fight enemies. Nature interference type. Blazers who can control elemental energies such as wind, fire, thunder, and lightning, acting as agents of heaven and earth. Concept interference type and causality interference type. Blazers whose abilities directly affect a certain concept or causality, and they are extremely rare. Arthur raised his hand and summoned a platinum longsword. Air currents gradually gathered. He casually bluffed without even blinking. This is my noble art. The admissions team gave it the codename, Dragon of Elements. My ability belongs to the nature interference type. Not just storms, but flames, lightning, and water currents, I can control them all. At this moment, Stella, who had been silently listening to their conversation, her eyes lit up, and she exclaimed. You're also a nature interference type. Also. Hearing Stella's exclamation, Arthur looked at her with a strange expression, then smacked his lips and didn't refute anything. Shinguji Kurono crossed her hands, maintaining the same pose as Commander Akari, and murmured to herself. A nature interference type who can control multiple elements, and a rank A at that. Get him, must get him, no matter what, get him. A drop of cold sweat involuntarily trickled down Stella's forehead, and she quietly reminded her. Chairwoman, it seems you accidentally spoke your thoughts aloud. Bang! Shinguji Kurono stood up, slapping the desk with both hands, her face showing undisguised joy as she looked at Arthur and Stella. You too, as the chairwoman of Hagen, I once again welcome you to the Academy on behalf of the school. I wish us great success at this year's 7-Star Sword Art Festival. Stella nodded confidently in response. No problem, I'm aiming for the championship. Arthur calmly waved his hand and raised the question he had in mind. So, it's confirmed that I and Vermilion will be selected as main representatives, right? Who are the other members then? Other members? Shinguji Kurono paused slightly, then remembered that Arthur was not familiar with Hagen Academy and began to explain. Previously, Hagen Academy's selections were handled by a committee, and I won't go into the details of some of the unsavory aspects here. Regarding this year's representative selection battle, I plan to adopt a completely practical combat selection mechanism. Practical combat, X2. Subsequently, Shinguji Kurono told Arthur and Stella about her envisioned full practical combat selection system. A single elimination tournament involving the entire school, where losers are immediately eliminated, with random computer-matched draws. Stella's face became very excited after hearing it, wishing she could start battling powerful classmates right now. Arthur, however, frowned deeply, and the look in his eyes towards Shinguji Kurono gradually changed. Chairwoman, I speak frankly, so please don't mind. Did you really use your brain? Hearing Arthur's sarcasm, Shinguji Kurono's previously cheerful expression turned gloomy, and an unreleased magical pressure suddenly descended. Arthur, what do you mean by that? You're still asking me what I mean. Arthur gave a wry smile, rubbing his temples with a slight headache. He became increasingly certain that she had never been involved in management before, otherwise, she would never have come up with such a ridiculous competition system. Since you want to achieve good results at the 7-Star Sword Art Festival, what kind of elites can be selected by a competition that doesn't even have multiple rounds? Let's say, for example, if Vermilion and I were to face each other early on, would you still plan to eliminate one of us according to the rules? Even if we are the only 2 rank A knights in Hagen Academy? Shinguji Kurono's expression instantly froze, as if someone had thrown a basin of cold water over her head. The indignation in her eyes quickly gave way to bewilderment and disbelief. Stella also widened her eyes, clearly realizing this fatal flaw. The excitement on her face faded, replaced by a trace of confusion and helplessness. The air seemed to freeze at this moment, and the chairwoman's office fell into an eerie silence. Shinguji Kurono opened her mouth, seemingly wanting to refute something, but couldn't utter a single word. Arthur calmly looked at her, waiting for an answer, a hint of playfulness in his eyes, as if he had long anticipated her current predicament. So, chairwoman, Arthur was the first to break the silence, a determined curve forming at the corner of his mouth. Do you have any new ideas for such a simplistic selection mechanism now? Or are you planning to stick to your guns and personally bury Hagen Academy's only chance this year? 1 comments 0 vote, 43. The selection rights have changed hands. Pojun's hidden trump card. Chapter 43. The selection rights change hands. Hagen's hidden trump card. As Arthur countered, the awkward atmosphere in the chairwoman's office grew thicker. Shinguji Kurono and Stella were both standard combat-oriented individuals, and they hadn't deeply considered the flaws in the selection tournament system before. Now that the major bug in the selection mechanism was mercilessly exposed by Arthur, Shinguji Kurono, already annoyed by the 7-Star Sword Art Festival, buried her face in her hands and slumped back into her office chair. What if I add a round-robin system? It won't work. Arthur's tone was decisive. Not only can the students' recovery speed not sustain it, but it will also consume a massive amount of academy resources. Arthur once again mercilessly shattered her illusion, and the new chairwoman's face turned ashen, as she closed her eyes in complete resignation. She wearily waved her hand. Then what brilliant ideas does Arthur Pendragon have? Surely you didn't say all this just to amuse me, did you? Arthur looked composed, raised 2 fingers, and said in a deep voice. First, postpone the start of the selection tournament by 1 week. Second, give me the planning authority for the representative selection battles. Give it to you. For a moment, Shinguji Kurono felt her temples throbbing. She had originally thought the addition of a rank A knight was a blessing for Hagen Academy, but now it seemed neither of these two were easy to deal with. Arthur Pendragon, Hagen Academy has never had a precedent of delegating selection authority to students, let alone new students. Arthur withdrew his fingers, his gaze calmly sweeping over the Hagen Academy's past competition certificates displayed on the left. Top 4, top 4, top 4, third place, third place. My goal is to step onto the stage of the 7-Star Sword Art Festival, confront other academies one by one, and ultimately achieve victory. If the chairwoman is content with Hagen Academy's current situation, then just pretend I never spoke. Shinguji Kurono narrowed her phoenix eyes, crushed her cigarette fiercely into the ashtray, pondered for a moment, and finally nodded in agreement. Hagen Academy's performance had already hit rock bottom, it couldn't get any worse than this. It might as well take this opportunity to gamble on the variables brought by these two rank A knights. Immediately, Shinguji Kurono efficiently arranged Arthur and Stella's dormitories and sent someone to guide them to collect their daily necessities. She, on the other hand, sat back down in front of her computer, her fingertip lightly tapping the mouse, and a new entrance examination report unfolded. Name: Stella Vermilion. Age: 15. Nationality: Vermilion Kingdom. Attack power: A. Defense power: A. Magical power: A. Magic control: B. Physical ability: B+. Luck: A. Inherent armament: Hiryu Zai Ken. Shinguji Kurono compared the two reports, a childish cunning glinting in her eyes. Her gaze fell on the inherent armament section of Arthur's report. As expected, it was blank. The admissions team only dared to provisionally assign the codename Elemental Dragon, not daring to overstep their bounds and name it arbitrarily. Shinguji Kurono lightly tapped 4 characters on the keyboard, and the frustration from Arthur's repeated rebuttals earlier was swept away, her mood instantly becoming pleasant. Arrogant brat, let this chairwoman vent a little of an adult's resentment too. Meanwhile, on the way to collect daily necessities, the proud Stella couldn't hold back and invited Arthur to a mock battle. Unexpectedly, Arthur flatly refused, without the slightest hesitation. I am a pure combatant. I never fight people using a fantasy form. If you don't have the corresponding resolve, don't challenge me. With those words, Arthur left on his own, leaving Stella standing stunned, speechless for a moment. As the acknowledged strongest in the Vermilion Kingdom, her power was far more than what the word talent could encompass. The effort she put in was enough to make ordinary people fall far behind. Even so, Stella had never thought of continuously refining her skills in pure actual combat. Blazers fight in fantasy form, where attacks only reduce stamina, at most leading to exhaustion or unconsciousness. Actual combat, however, is a struggle where every strike draws blood. A slight mistake can mean the difference between life and death. Stella gazed at Arthur's receding back. That figure, perhaps, carried something heavier than the efforts she knew of. However, if she could hear Arthur's thoughts at that moment, she would probably be so angry that she would immediately draw her sword. Mock battle: hey, I'm not a blazer, where would my noble phantasm get a fantasy form? Under the guidance of the staff, Arthur successfully received 2 sets of Hagen male uniforms in a mobile terminal distributed by the Academy. Upon entering the dormitory, Arthur first carefully put away the magical mystic code from Chaldea, then changed into Hagen Academy's uniform. Both uniforms were black and white, which didn't make the nostalgic Arthur feel awkward at all. Creak. The dormitory door opened again, and a tall, black-haired young man in a tracksuit walked in. Excuse me, are you? Arthur smiled and raised his hand. Nice to meet you, I'm Arthur Pendragon, a first-year student. Please take care of me. Fu, Arthur added. Oh, this is Fu, my companion. Seeing Arthur's friendly attitude and no strange looks, the black-haired young man quickly raised his hand in response. Hello, my name is Kurigane Ikki, also a first year. Please take care of me. I never thought someone would be sharing a dorm with me. Arthur heard this, looked at Kurigane Ikki, who was filled with endless emotion, and asked with a puzzled tone. Why do you say that? Does Hagen Academy have unique rules even for dormitory allocation? Kurigane Ikki nodded solemnly. Of course. Hagen Academy operates on a ranking system and arranges students of similar strength to live together to encourage mutual improvement. Arthur showed a thoughtful expression, his eyes filled with curiosity. Similar strength? Then what is Kurigane's blazer rank? Hearing this, Kurogane Ikki's expression suddenly became embarrassed. But he now believed Arthur was in a similar situation to him, and since his own circumstances were already known throughout the school, there was no need to hide it. My blazer rank is F, and my ability is only basic physical enhancement, so I've been held back. Arthur's eyes darkened slightly, and he took out his mobile terminal, quickly searching for Kurogane Ikki's name. Name: Kurogane Ikki. Class: Hagen Academy, first year, Class 1. Age: 16. Blazer rank: F. Attack power: F. Defense power: F. Magical power: F. Magic control: E. Physical ability: A. Luck: F. Inherent armament: Intetsu. According to the Academy's records, Kurogane Ikki's words were true, he was indeed only in Frank Blazer. However, in reality, Arthur didn't sense the slightest aura of weakness from him. His movements were refined in every gesture, and the fighting spirit around him was steady and prolonged, all revealing the demeanor of a seasoned strong individual. Kurogane, Arthur began, a hint of fighting spirit flashing in his eyes, are you interested in a real combat sparring match with me? 44. Two similar people, similar fighting methods. Chapter 44. Two similar people, similar fighting methods. Facing Arthur's request for a practice match, Kurogane Ikki's face first showed unconcealed surprise. Then he quickly realized that the other party was a foreigner and it was normal for him not to understand the situation, so he immediately explained. Arthur, you probably haven't heard the surname Kurogane before, have you? You can just call me Arthur. Kurogane, is that a famous surname? As Arthur spoke, he tapped his fingertip, and relevant content quickly popped up on his mobile terminal screen. The Kurogane family was a preeminent and influential presence throughout Japan. The family produced numerous talents, possessing a considerable number of high-level blazers, and held a crucial position in all walks of life. Even the head of the International Alliance's Japan branch was held by Kurogane Gen, the current head of the Kurogane family. Born into such a distinguished family, Kurogane Ikki was only in Frank Blazer, so his situation was imaginable. After understanding the crux of the matter, Arthur's lips curved into a playful smile, and he teased. I see, so that's why you've been held back a grade all this time, right? Kurogane Ikki nodded calmly, with no intention of defending himself. He had long been accustomed to all sorts of gazes and ridicule. Even if Arthur's attitude towards him suddenly changed the next second, it would just be a common occurrence. You're pretty amazing. Upon hearing Arthur's praise, Kurogane Ikki was somewhat taken aback and quickly emphasized. If you get involved with me, you might be targeted by the Kurogane family and won't be able to make a living in any industry in Japan. Arthur shook his head indifferently, a hint of nostalgia in his eyes as he looked at Kurogane Ikki. Then, Kurogane, do you know what the Arthur family is like? Kurogane Ikki was slightly stunned. Arthur, isn't that your family? My family. Arthur is a family without emotions. Arthur raised his finger and pointed at himself, the mockery on his lips growing thicker. And my situation is even more special. I am a transparent person bearing the Arthur surname, no one acknowledges my existence. Kurogane Ikki's pupils contracted upon hearing this, not expecting his new roommate's experiences to be so similar to his own. Just as he was still immersed in past memories, Arthur chuckled. But things completely changed later. Kurogane Ikki suddenly looked up, his eyes full of inquiry, seemingly intending to find a similar turning point from Arthur. Of course, Arthur did not disappoint him. A crimson magical power fluctuation gradually overflowed from his body, and the brutal oppressive feeling sent chills down one's spine. Because I am strong, stronger than those who only gossip behind my back. Whether it was strength or etiquette, I did my best to be the best, and after that, those guys learned to bow their heads when they saw me. Kurogane, I believe you can do it too, because I can feel that you are also a strong person. After sensing Arthur's terrifying amount of magical power, Kurogane Ikki's expression was solemn, yet he was also incredibly excited to have received someone else's recognition. He also unleashed the magical power within his body. Although it was vastly different from Arthur's, the unwavering resolve and resilience contained within were identical. Thank you very much for your praise, I can't wait to fight you. On the open ground not far from the dormitory building, Arthur habitually stretched his wrists and called out to Kurogane Ikki, who was warming up. Let me say this first, my blazer rank is a rank, and I never use my fantasy form when fighting people, is that okay? Of course, I'm ready to start anytime. Come, Intetsu. As he spoke, Kurogane Ikki pressed his fists and palms together, magical power erupted from his body, and a jet-black katana appeared out of thin air. Arthur didn't have those fancy summoning incantations like Blazer's, he simply raised his hand to summon his platinum longsword and charged forward. Flame style. Burning wings. The instantaneous crosslashes were like dragon wings spreading through the sky, but the sword itself did not display the usual blazing flames. Since Kurogane Ikki's magical power was only frank, he naturally wouldn't rely on magical power to crush the opponent, but instead chose to compete in swordsmanship. The slashes furiously bore down on him, but Kurogane Ikki's expression didn't change in the slightest. He instantly raised his sword to block the two slashes, then used the force to retreat, secretly clicking his tongue. Such heavy force, he hasn't even activated his magical power yet, it seems he has the advantage in physical ability too. Kurogane Ikki, who trained his physique day and night, his eyes flickered, not expecting that he couldn't even keep his only strong point. Thunder style. Light Fang. With a flash of golden light, Arthur swiftly held his sword and broke through the air, the sharp edge aimed directly at the vital points of the chest and abdomen. Fourth secret sword. Mirage Wolf. Kurogane Ikki's speed surged, leaving an afterimage in his original spot, his true body abruptly appearing behind Arthur, bringing his sword down with a heavy chop. At this moment, the aura emanating from Kurogane Ikki suddenly changed, bearing a striking resemblance to Arthur's wild, dragon beast-like oppressive feeling. Flame style. Burning wings. He replicated the left and right crosslashes perfectly, but Arthur, as if he had eyes in the back of his head, blocked them with a backhand sword, retreating while laughing. You actually copied my move after seeing it only once. Kurogane Ikki quickly stopped his pursuit, explaining with an embarrassed expression. I'm really sorry, but this is my fighting style. Yes, this was Kurogane Ikki's swordsmanship, imitation. Because no one had ever been willing to guide him in his training, he had to observe, ponder, and study on his own. Over time, he gradually came to understand the essence of the sword. As long as one followed the vein's context flow and reached the truth, one could analyze an opponent's swordsmanship in a short time and integrate it upwards, making it compatible. Arthur reset his stance, scrutinizing Kurogane Ikki with a half smile. There's nothing to apologize for, after all, I won't apologize to you. Huh. At these words, Kurogane Ikki immediately stared at Arthur with suspicion. Then, an unprecedented scene appeared before his eyes. Arthur, who was charging forward, stumbled his steps, and his figure immediately split into two, raising his sword and slashing down with almost the exact same movements as Ikki's earlier. Third secret sword. Angetsu. Unable to distinguish which was the illusion, Kurogane Ikki was forced to use his defensive swordsmanship, blocking both attacks simultaneously with a spinning, force-deflecting slash. However, the secret sword, which should have perfectly rebounded the enemy's strength, was deformed due to its hurried execution, and unable to withstand the opponent's monstrous strength, he retreated continuously, a sweet taste in his throat. With no time to tend to the minor injury, Kurogane Ikki tremblingly raised his hand, pointing at the relaxed and at ease Arthur. That move you just used was my Mirage Wolf. Arthur nodded in praise. So that move is called Mirage Wolf. A very fitting name. And Frank's student actually vaguely grasped the extreme of martial arts, Pojun Academy, interesting. Arthur's thoughts stirred, and his interest in the young man before him and this academy grew by 3 points. 1 comments 0 vote. 45. Burning Life Shura. Taboo Sword. Chapter 45. Burning Life Shura. Taboo Sword. The breeze rolled up withered leaves, spiraling through the silent streets. Kurogane Ikki suppressed the turbulent chi and blood, his eyes betraying his shock as he hurriedly asked. Could Arthur also possess an ability similar to imitating sword skills? It's quite troublesome to explain, so just assume it is. Arthur waved his hand casually, and with his breathing, the magic conduction fluctuations suddenly intensified. I'm equally curious about your imitation sword skills. Try to replicate my move again. Flame style. Burning wings. In an instant, blazing flames soared from the platinum longsword, burning fiercely. The wings of the red dragon spread open ferociously, and a terrifying heat wave rushed forward. Kurogane Ikki's face twisted in bitterness as he rapidly retreated, not daring to clash head-on. Arthur forced his opponent back with a single move but did not pursue. He casually held the platinum longsword in a reverse grip and said loudly, Kurogane, imitating my moves isn't that simple. Besides the movements, you also need to learn how to properly channel magic conduction. Kurogane Ikki panted slightly, repeating, properly, channel magic conduction. Leaving the breathing rhythm aside, magic conduction was the fundamental difference between them. Complete magic conduction breathing was from the inside out. Relying solely on movements could only replicate the form, not the essence. Kurogane Ikki was lacking in magic conduction, merely enhancing his physical abilities was already his limit. In other words, it was absolutely impossible for him to wield magic conduction as freely as Arthur, controlling various elemental forces. What? You haven't used your full strength yet, have you? Or are you saying? Thunder style, light fang. The sky exploded with light, and the slash tore through the sky, as swift as lightning, as fierce as a dragon's fang. A slight misstep would mean utter destruction. Clang, metal clashed, sparks flying. Arthur held his sword, pressing Kurogane Ikki to his knees. He raised an eyebrow slightly and asked, "You think you can still act at ease when fighting me?" After barely blocking the swift and powerful strike that was as fast as a thunderbolt, Kurogane Ikki's eyes changed abruptly, revealing sharp determination. He rolled away to create distance, then stood up, his dark iron blade held horizontally across his chest, and apologized in a low voice. "You're right, lacking the talent of a magic knight, I have no right to be arrogant. From now on, I will no longer retreat. It's just a practical training match. If I don't give my all even now, how can I be worthy of myself, who swore an oath with my life? Arthur, please witness the fruits of my efforts so far." Itoshira. Boom. Azure flames erupted from his body, and a torrent of magic conduction, far exceeding what came before, raged and surged, cracking the street beneath his feet. Before Arthur could ask, Kurogane Ikki had already shattered the ground, rushing forward with a furious momentum no less than light fangs. Seventh secret sword, lightning flash, clang, clang, clang. The continuous clanging of metal echoed through the dormitory street. Kurogane Ikki, who had been struggling earlier, now transformed into a blood-soaked Asura, charging forward relentlessly, his attacks like a tide, each move a life or death gamble. At this moment, Arthur's smile faded, his eyes serious as he re-examined Kurogane Ikki before him. Under the transparent world's vision, the human body held no secrets. After activating the so-called Itoshira, Kurogane Ikki compressed all the energy within his body, unleashing it in an instant. His total magic conduction had not substantially increased, rather, he forcibly stimulated his deeply hidden life potential, going Allen. However, this kind of desperate fighting style, like the mark, was a forbidden technique that prematurely overdrawn one's life essence, and it could not last long. The opponent's determination to fight with his life was indeed admirable. Moon style, dark claw. 5 shadowy claws tore through the night sky, irresistible. Kurogane Ikki, unable to break through after a prolonged assault, suffered another heavy blow, staggering and rolling several meters away. Arthur shouted sternly, "Stop, Kurogane. If you keep fighting, you'll die." Cough, cough. "Thank you for your concern, my situation isn't that bad yet." Before he finished speaking, the azure flames enveloping Kurogane Ikki's body suddenly extinguished, and the surging magic conduction also dissipated, almost inaudible. Arthur's eyes showed surprise as he looked at Kurogane Ikki, who was slumped on the ground, temporarily unable to stand up. Indeed, after performing Itoshira, the opponent's strength was completely depleted, making him unable to move. But was that all? The opponent had clearly activated a secret technique that overdrawn his life essence, yet he could still retract it on his own after the battle. This situation was truly beyond Arthur's expectations, making him secretly marvel. "Kurogane, your creativity is far beyond what I imagined, comparable to that genius swordsman who pioneered the breathing technique back then." Kurogane Ikki managed to calm his breathing, his eyes filled with curiosity as he hurriedly asked, "What was the name of that genius swordsman?" "That. Don't misunderstand, it's just that I've studied sword fighting styles from all over the world before, but I've never seen your moves, so I'm a bit curious." Arthur said with a hint of emotion, "His name was Yorichi Sugikuni. He was a swordsman whose talent was almost divine. Because he was naturally indifferent and had no fixed abode, he left no legacy. I only learned his style by chance." After hearing Arthur's explanation, Kurogane Ikki lowered his head, his eyes flickering, hesitating whether to ask for guidance on magic conduction breathing. It was rare to meet someone who wasn't intimidated by the Kurogane family's power and acknowledged his efforts. He really didn't want to appear too opportunistic. How about we exchange secret techniques? For a moment, Kurogane Ikki almost thought he had accidentally blurted out his thoughts. But he quickly realized that this sentence actually came from Arthur's mouth. I have high hopes for your Itoshira move, it might solve a problem that has troubled me for a long time. In exchange, I will teach you the magic conduction breathing style that suits you, without holding anything back. You, consider it, consider. What the hell is there to consider? Kurogane Ikki's eyes widened. A surge of power, from who knew where, erupted from his supposedly exhausted body, and he suddenly stood up. No need to consider, I agree. As Arthur helped Kurogane Ikki return to the dormitory, Stella stood with her arms crossed on the roof of the dormitory building, looking down, her eyes flashing with a strange brilliance. This princess, who had absolute confidence in her own strength, was in high spirits. The fierce battle just now had not moved her in the slightest. One is a strong opponent in combat on my level, the other possesses an unheard-of Blazung blade technique. Indeed, coming to Hagen Academy was the right choice. Chairwoman's office. Shinguji Kurono's gaze shifted from the monitor screen, and she turned her head to another observer. What do you think? Saikyo Nene held an iron fan, her petite figure clad in a wide kimono, feigning maturity as she lightly chuckled, covering her lips. Which one are you asking about, Ku-chan? Don't call me Ku-chan. Shinguji Kurono waved her hand irritably. I generally know about Kurogane's situation, as for that new kid. He's very strong. Saikyo Nene snapped open her iron fan, covering her chin, and replied with a smile. That kid never used his full strength, even when the Kurogane kid used his forbidden secret technique, it was the same. Ku-chan, you really hit the jackpot this time. Shinguji Kurono was too lazy to correct her friend's address again. She leaned back in her high-end office chair, muttering in a low voice. I hope so. 0 comments 0 vote. 46. The Princess Challenges. The auditions take a sudden turn. Chapter 46. Her Royal Highness the Princess Challenges. The selection competition takes a sudden turn. The next day, as the first rays of dawn appeared, a cool breeze began to blow. Arthur, dressed in his brand new uniform, lightly patted the still sleeping Kurogane Ikki on the upper bunk. Hey, Ikki, if you're late for the first class of the new semester, you'll be held back a year. Ha, give me a break, talking about such terrifying things first thing in the morning. With obvious panda eyes, Kurogane Ikki groggily sat up, reaching out to haphazardly comb his bird's nest-like hair. The two had debated the principles of a secret technique until late last night, which directly led to him, who usually woke up early for morning exercises, almost oversleeping. In contrast, Arthur was still full of energy, showing no signs of fatigue. Indeed, one cannot generalize about the physiques of different people. Kurogane Ikki then quickly got out of bed, rushed to the bathroom, washed up, and changed clothes. The entire process was smooth and efficient, and he was ready within 5 minutes. I still have some questions about a few details of the third form of sun breathing. Arthur pulled out his mobile terminal and shook it. Let's talk on the way, otherwise we'll really be late. FWOO. Fu shook her pure white fur, lightly leapt, and landed steadily on Arthur's shoulder, waving her small paw, signaling to depart. As the two people in one beast hurried down the dormitory building, they saw a figure standing at the main entrance, Stella. She stood with her arms crossed, seemingly waiting specifically for someone to arrive. Kurogane Ikki's tone carried a hint of playfulness. A rank A knight, the Princess of Vermilion, could she be here specifically for you? Arthur shrugged indifferently. Who knows, maybe she's still upset that I rejected her request for a sparring match yesterday. Kurogane Ikki feigned surprise and whispered, you did something like that? A vein throbbed on Arthur's forehead. Please clarify what you mean by, something like that. I didn't do anything that needed to be censored. Kurogane Ikki winked. You can't say for sure, after all, you can know a person's face, but not their heart. Arthur was too lazy to bicker with him any further, and suddenly sped up, intending to bypass Stella directly and head to the classroom. However, the moment they left the dormitory building, Stella, who had been standing still and waiting, also moved, taking long strides and following leisurely behind the two. Kurogane Ikki. Nod gaze. Arthur. Degree. Fu. Lozenge Omega Lozenge. Look, that's the famous Crimson Princess. Not only is she a princess, but she's also a magic knight genius, a rarity in 100 years. Tisk, she's really a winner in life, starting in easy mode. Hey, look, isn't the one walking in front the legendary Radiant Dragon Holy Sword? Silver hair and silver eyes, no mistake, it's him. Another rank A knight. The freshmen this year are too terrifying. But why are those two prodigies hanging out with the fallen knight? Who knows, the ways of geniuses are always so unpredictable. Arthur and his two companions walked with their heads down along the corridor leading to the first-year classrooms, with constant whispers from busybodies, muffled but still clear. Kurogane Ikki quietly leaned closer to Arthur, lowering his voice to ask. Radiant Dragon Holy Sword, just a prank by a certain petty chairwoman, no need to pay attention. Arthur didn't even bother to think of a second suspect and immediately came to a conclusion. Ignoring the scrutinizing gazes in Stella, who followed closely like a spirit, Arthur and Kurogane Ikki entered the classroom side by side. The classmates had obviously heard that two rank A knights would be joining their class, and at this moment, they only cast cautious, curious glances, but no one dared to approach and speak. Arthur found a window seat and sat down. Only then did he turn his head to look at Stella, who was still following him step by step, a playful smirk on his lips. Vermilion, does your country have a special custom of tailing strange men? What? Stella's beautiful eyes, which had originally burned with fighting spirit, instantly filled with shame and anger. Then she gritted her silver teeth and glared fiercely at Arthur. Don't be so conceited, I just want to find an opportunity to have a fair fight with both of you. Both? Arthur raised an eyebrow, his smile carrying a hint of wanting to stir up trouble, and turned his head to look at Kurogane Ikki beside him. Ikki, it seems Vermilion also highly recognizes your strength. How about a friendly simulated match during lunch break? No simulated match. Before Kurogane Ikki could speak, Stella had already flatly refused. She straightened her back, raised her head, and proudly declared. I came to Hagen Academy to become stronger. The improvement from actual combat is far beyond what simulation can offer, and I will never back down again. Stella's answer was resolute, clearly aimed at Arthur's refusal yesterday. Kurogane Ikki, who knew the inside story, could only cast a helpless look, silently pulled out a textbook from his desk, and pretended to study it intently. Hey, don't you say, this textbook is really a textbook. The other students naturally heard Stella's fiery declaration, but before they could start whispering, the first-year homeroom teacher gracefully walked into the classroom. Ahem, good morning, everyone. Congratulations on successfully enrolling. I am your homeroom teacher, Origi Yuri. Because this is my first time as a homeroom teacher, and I'm also a lively and super energetic new teacher, please kindly call me Yurichin Diamond Suit. Origi Yuri, who made this energetic declaration, actually seemed listless. Her panda eyes were even darker than Kurogane Ikki's, and her entire being exuded a kind of decadent aura unique to severely ill patients. Arthur and Stella both watched Origi Yuri on the podium with a complicated expression. Almost in unison, they complained. Where do you look lively at all? Ahahaha, actually, Teacher Origi is really nice, although she... Alright, I really can't make it up anymore. Kurogane Ikki gave up struggling, because he himself felt that Origi Yuri's words in her actual state were incredibly contradictory. On the podium, Origi Yuri was still trying hard to liven up the atmosphere. She slowly wrote the 5 big characters, 7-Star Sword Art Festival, on the electronic blackboard and began to explain. Actually, what I want to talk about most with everyone now is about the 7-Star Sword Art Festival representative selection battle. Everyone should still remember what the chairwoman said at the opening ceremony, right? Yurichin is here to inform everyone of something very regrettable. The campus selection battle, originally scheduled to start next week, has been officially cancelled. The latest selection system will be re-announced at an explanatory meeting as soon as possible. The campus selection battle has been cancelled. Hearing this news, Kurogane Ikki suddenly stood up from his seat, his face filled with disbelief. Before this, he had always been unfairly ostracized by the school's high-ranking officials, unable to participate in the representative battle, which primarily used inherent ability values as the selection criterion. He had thought that this year, under the vigorous reforms of Chairwoman Shinguji Kurono, he would finally be able to carve out his own path through actual combat selection. But now, something like this has happened again. Origi Yuri naturally understood Kurogane Ikki's situation. She raised her hand, signaling him to calm down, and then continued to explain to all the students below the stage. I know everyone is very concerned about the selection battle, but considering the complex issues from various aspects, the chairwoman still needs some time to handle them properly. Please be patient and wait. Arthur maintained his steady posture, as if everything happening around him had nothing to do with him. He just slowly flipped through the first-year textbook, and without looking up, said to Kurogane Ikki beside him. Relax, Ikki, you'll definitely make it as a regular. Kurogane Ikki slowly sat down, his expression complex, with a hint of an almost imperceptible low tone in his voice. Thank you for your comfort. Sitting behind the two, Stella's eyes flickered subtly, looking as if she wanted to speak but hesitated, then wanted to speak again. She was well aware of the changes in the representative selection battle. After all, she had witnessed the entire process, hadn't she? Then, Stella's gaze fell on Arthur, who was quietly flipping through a book, as if everything was under his control, and she whispered to herself. What a dark-bellied guy. She narrowed her eyes slightly, thinking to herself. No matter how the selection battle changed, she had to qualify as a regular representative. After class, I'll talk to this guy. 0 comments 0 vote. 47. Give the princess a little orthopedic shock. Discover the true name of the treasure. Chapter 47. Give the princess a little orthopedic shock. Explore the true name of the treasure. The first day of school, which should have been a relaxed period of adjustment, was stirred up by an unexpected reunion. After the class's self-introductions were hastily concluded, Orikita Yuri announced their dismissal. Arthur, Stella, and Kurogane Ikki returned to the dormitory building together. Kurogane Ikki still walked at the forefront, looking preoccupied, his brows furrowed, his face as if steeped in bitterness. Stella quietly slowed her pace, sidled up to Arthur, and lowered her voice. What exactly are you planning? The school selection battles can't be delayed indefinitely. Hearing this, Arthur's lips curved into a playful smile. What, is the famous Vermilion student worried that she won't make the list? Who's worried about that? Stella's cheeks flushed slightly, then she took a deep breath, trying to calm her heaving chest, which made her already impressive curves even more striking. She glared indignantly at the always composed Arthur, about to speak, when a sudden commotion erupted ahead. Arthur and Stella looked up simultaneously, only to see Kurogane Ikki, who had been walking ahead, now sitting on the ground. A petite young girl was nestled tightly in his arms, her face filled with rapture, greedily sniffing his scent. Stella, Omega, the flushed princess trembled as she raised her hand, pointing at the closely embracing pair, her voice slightly distorted. Those two people, are they lovers? But isn't that girl too young? Could it be a lolicon? As she spoke, she quickly pulled out her mobile terminal, seemingly intending to immediately order a pork cutlet rice set for Kurogane Ikki. Arthur, quick-witted, grabbed Stella's hand as she was about to dial, a meaningful, mischievous smile on his face. Calm down, Vermilion student, let's first hear the suspect's confession. Hey, how did I become a suspect? Kurogane Ikki rubbed his aching scalp, protesting loudly, on the verge of tears. Shizuku is my sister, my biological sister. We haven't seen each other in years. I was shocked too, okay. Upon hearing this, Stella paused, looking at Arthur with a belly full of suspicion. Are Japan siblings usually this close? Arthur chuckled helplessly. Vermilion student, if I didn't know for sure you were a foreign princess, I would almost think you were deliberately telling dirty jokes. Just then, Kurogane Shizuku, who had been immersed in her own world, seemed to finally come to her senses. She slowly lifted her head, her eyes brimming with tenderness, gazing affectionately at her brother, Kurogane Ikki, whom she hadn't seen in years, and then she resolutely leaned in again, aiming directly for Ikki's lips. Stella. Sigma Su degree D degree, Su. Arthur's eyes narrowed slightly, and he unhurriedly pulled out his mobile terminal from his pocket, tapping his finger to search for the name, Shizuku. Name, Kurogane Shizuku. Class, Hagen Academy, first year, class 4. Age, 15. Blazer rank, B. Attack power, D. Defense power, B. Magic power, C. Magic control, A. Physical ability, E. Luck, C. Innate weapon, Yoishigure. Indeed, the surname is Kurogane. Arthur, a mysterious smile playing on his lips, looked down at the struggling Kurogane Ikki, his voice light, as if from beyond the clouds. Ikkizan, are you planning to go to the police station to file a report first? Or go to the hospital for an orthopedic specialist consultation now? Kurogane Ikki. After a chaotic scene, Kurogane Ikki finally managed to explain the deep sibling affection farce. Although Arthur and Stella's gazes at him were still filled with the scrutiny reserved for scumbags, clearly indicating a low level of trust in his explanation. Arthur had a premonition that if he continued to dwell on this matter, it would likely consume the entire day, so he decisively withdrew and headed to the chairwoman's office. Shinguji Kurono had been waiting for a long time. Seeing Arthur enter, she skipped the pleasantries and directly handed him a thick stack of documents. All the admission reports for students from first to third year are here. Are you sure you want to rescreen all of them? Arthur took the weighty stack of documents, tidied them casually, and asked in return. Otherwise, does the chairwoman have a more convenient method? Even among frank blazers, a dark horse like Kurogane Ikki can emerge. Who dares to say there aren't other overlooked gems in Hagen Academy? Hearing this, Shinguji Kurono's face flashed with an almost imperceptible hint of embarrassment, then she gestured for Arthur to help himself. She, meanwhile, was happy to take it easy, serving as a mere background figure who only gave orders. Arthur sat on the nearby sofa and first pulled out the files for himself, Stella, Kurogane Ikki, and Tuka, placing them aside. These individuals were already his planned core team members. He slowly flipped through the documents in his hand, asking Shinguji Kurono without looking up. How is the plan for adding IPS regeneration pods progressing? I say, you boy. Shinguji Kurono felt a faint throbbing in her temples again, and gritted her teeth. You couldn't possibly be treating IPS regeneration pods as some kind of discarded item found anywhere on the roadside, could you? How could IPS regeneration pods be easily obtained? They were a top medical miracle that the International Alliance had spent countless efforts and years of research to bring into existence. Whether it was severed limbs, ruptured organs, or even fatal head trauma. As long as the injured person had a breath left, the regeneration pod could complete the treatment in a very short time, without even leaving a scar. The International Alliance has always treated the resource allocation to its affiliated academies equally. My previous multiple applications were all rejected without exception. Arthur looked up at Shinguji Kurono, who wore a bitter expression, and helplessly spread his hands. If the number of regeneration pods cannot be guaranteed, the subsequent competition format must be adjusted, otherwise, it would be too harsh for core team members who need to fight continuously. Shinguji Kurono naturally understood this principle and could only continue to wave her hand with a pained expression. I understand. I will try to use my personal connections later, perhaps I can secure 1 or 2 more units. Hearing this, a hint of surprise flashed in Arthur's eyes. He hadn't expected this seemingly unassuming chairwoman to have such deep connections. All right, then I'll leave this matter to you. Saying that, he neatly gathered the remaining admission reports and stood up. There's one more thing, regarding intelligence on the other 6 academies. Know yourself and your enemy, and you will never be defeated. I don't want to step onto the field completely ignorant of the enemy's abilities. After Arthur left, Shinguji Kurono skillfully lit a cigarette, rotated her office chair, and turned her back to the door. She gazed out at the swirling clouds through the window, her figure revealing an undeniable weariness and world weariness. Sigh. This Brank chairwoman, she's had enough of it. Inside the Hagen Library, Arthur opened an ancient book titled, Overview of Innate Weapons, and carefully studied its contents. Admittedly, he was not a blazer, and naturally had no so-called innate weapon. However, the term, innate weapon, was only officially established after the International Alliance was founded. In the long years before that, people had given them many different names. Holy Sword, Demonic Bow, Cursed Tool, Noble Phantasm. As the materialization of the soul, it could respond to the wielder's heart, unleash all sorts of strange abilities, and faithfully reflect the wielder's essence. The Hagen Academy Library housed countless cultivation insights left behind by exceptionally gifted blazers. They generally believed that the human soul was not immutable. If a blazer encountered a major upheaval at a certain stage of his life, the symbol of his soul, the innate weapon would also undergo a transformation accordingly. After carefully comparing the records in several documents, Arthur slowly closed the book in his hand. He made a grasping motion with his right hand, and the strange platinum longsword in its sheath appeared before him. He gazed calmly at this extremely bizarre broadsword, where the sword and sheath seemed to be one, and murmured to himself. A sword-shaped noble phantasm that cannot be drawn, its true form, I should have realized long ago. Unable to be drawn, perhaps it was a form of restraint, or perhaps it was the prelude to some deeper ability. Clang! The sword body suddenly emitted a light hum, and the scabbard also trembled violently. At this moment, the noble phantasm of unknown true name, having its core secret touched by Arthur, was responding in a unique way to its wielder's inquiry. 1 comments 0 vote. 48. A Bloody Weekend. The Vicious Fangs of the Rebels. Chapter 48. A Bloody Weekend. The Vicious Fangs of the Rebels. Students' daily routines are largely the same, no matter what world they are in. Even though Hagen Academy is a martial arts school that trains magic knights, it still gives students weekends off. Arthur had spent several days previously sifting through the main roster, and on this rare weekend holiday, he planned to go to the mall for some fun. Well, he admitted it. Compared to having fun, Arthur preferred immersing himself in books. But Fu had long been restless, and early this morning, she had jumped onto his face and bounced around, clearly indicating that if he didn't go out to play, she would torment him to death. Helpless, Arthur greeted Kurogane Ikki, changed back into his Chaldea mystic code, and prepared to leave. However, Kurogane Ikki was currently blocking the doorway in a standard Dageza pose, loudly requesting, "Please take me with you." Arthur was startled by his sudden action, then sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Although I already had a premonition that it would be troublesome, seeing as you're kneeling and kowtowing, tell me, what's going on?" Kurogane Ikki looked up, a wry and wronged expression on his face, and explained hesitantly. "I absolutely cannot stay in the dorm by myself, or Shizuku will definitely break in, and then..." Kurogane Ikki didn't finish the rest of his sentence, but Arthur already understood, letting out a cold chuckle. "As expected, we should call the police, you scumbag." Kurogane Ikki quickly argued, "I was forced." Arthur stood with his arms crossed, looking down at him, his cold chuckle still on his face. "That's not necessarily true. You can know a person's face, but not his heart. What goes around comes around." The words Kurogane Ikki once used to tease Arthur were now returned to him in full. But unlike the clear conscienced Arthur, Kurogane Ikki was clearly both fond of and afraid of his sister. Afterward, Kurogane Ikki, determined to shamelessly stick with Arthur, planned to leave school with him. Just as the two finished tidying up and pushed open the door, what they saw was a peculiar combination of Stella, Kurogane Shizuku, and an effeminate pretty boy. Stella was excited. "I heard you guys are going out to play. Count me in." Kurogane Shizuku looked on the verge of tears. "Brother, are you planning to abandon me?" The pretty boy smiled sweetly. "Nice to meet you, please be sure to kindly call me Alice." Arthur. "Oh, Sue." Kurogane Ikki. ... And so, the distinct 5-person group arrived at the department store near Hagen Academy. Stella, who had never been to a mall before, was highly enthusiastic about shopping, curious about every storefront, and always had to go in to explore. But when she mistakenly entered a men's clothing store and saw the underwear on the mannequin, she would run out, covering her face, blushing, which truly made it hard to understand this princess. Arthur tried not to pay attention to the inseparable Kurogane siblings at the end of the group, who were hugging each other. He subtly observed Alice, on his left, recalling the admission report he had seen a few days ago. Name: Arizuan Nagi. Class: Hagen Academy, 1st year, Class 4. Age: 18. Blazer rank: D. Attack power: E. Defense power: D. Magic power: D. Magic conduction control: C. Physical fitness: C. Luck: D. Inherent armament: Dark Hermit. How to put it, a rather mediocre test data. Neither as sharp as Arthur and Stella, nor as ridiculed by classmates as Kurogane Ikki. If he hadn't mastered Transparent World, allowing him to fully perceive everything around him, he might have been fooled by the other party's harmless appearance. Arizuan Nagi vaguely sensed something in Arthur's gaze, and with a gentle gesture, raised his arm to cover his mouth and chuckled softly. "What's wrong, Arthurkin? Even a rank A knight can't resist my charm." Arthur calmly shook his head and replied with a half-smile. "Arisoenkin is really joking. When it comes to how strong a rank A knight is, aren't you clearer about it than I am?" Arizuan Nagi still had a gentle smile on his face, but his steps gradually slowed, and he lowered his head to discuss private matters with Kurogane Shizuku. Shopping is the best way for girls to pass the time, but for boys, it's no less than high-intensity training. So, while Stella and Kurogane Shizuku were still enthusiastic and running around, the three boys excused themselves to go to the restroom for a break. Bang! A fully armed masked strongman suddenly kicked open the restroom door from outside, frantically spraying bullets into each cubicle, and only turned to leave after confirming no one was left. Then, a dark crack expanded from the wall into an oval shape, which was a highly concealed blazer skill. Arthur and the two others walked out of the crack, vaguely hearing cries, curses, and gunshots from outside. Kurogane Ikki whispered, "Who exactly are those people? Are they actually robbing a department store?" Arizu Nagi crossed his arms and sighed softly, "At least, they don't look like good people." Arthur pouted and retorted, "If it were just a robbery, it would be much simpler. This place is so close to Hagen Academy, what kind of desperate criminals do you think would dare to come here to seek death?" Kurogane Ikki's pupils suddenly contracted, and he exclaimed in a low voice, "Rebel Army." Hearing Arthur mention an existence that dared to provoke the Alliance Academy, Kurogane Ikki naturally first thought of those desperate madmen. The Rebel Army, a group of outlaws always active in the shadows of the world. They believe Blazers are humans chosen by God and define ordinary people without talent as an inferior race. They are committed to promoting this idea globally, attempting to build a new world ruled by Blazers over inferior races. Thinking of this, Kurogane Ikki pulled out his mobile terminal from his pocket, ready to call the police immediately. Slap! Arthur and Arizu Nagi simultaneously moved to stop him. "Calm down, it's the weekend now, the busiest time for them all. Arthurkin is right, acting rashly will only make the situation worse." Kurogane Ikki, who was in a panic, calmed down again and then asked, "Then what should we do? Should we just wait here?" Arthur shook his head and carefully moved to the restroom door, observing the situation outside. The armed terrorists were sweeping floor by floor, roughly pushing the panicking tourists, gathering them all into the first-floor lobby for custody. Arthur even saw Stella and Kurogane Shizuku among the hostages. He turned around and spread his hands to Kurogane Ikki and Arizu Nagi, saying, "Good news, the princess and Kurogane's sister are both calm, and no one has alerted the enemy yet. The bad news is, this group of rebel army seems to be fearless, not at all afraid of Hagen Academy's support." Kurogane Ikki also looked towards the lobby, frowning in speculation. "They're fearless because they're holding a large number of hostages, right?" Hearing such naive remarks, both Arizu Nagi and Arthur couldn't help but shake their heads and chuckle softly. "We can think about that later. Ikki, you're responsible for contacting the academy and explaining the situation. Arisoankin, could I trouble you to come with me for behind enemy lines reconnaissance?" Arthur stared at Arizu Nagi with a smile, who summoned an inherent armament shaped like a military knife and, turning sideways, cut open a crack. "Of course, happy to help. 0 comments 0 vote, 49, ridiculous absolute defense, a coward who doesn't even qualify." Chapter 49, Ridiculous Absolute Defense, a coward who isn't even qualified. The bustling department store, usually filled with noise, was now as silent as a tomb. Terrorists were spread out like ghosts, and the hostages, huddled on the floor with their heads in their hands, desperately covered their mouths, terrified that even a whisper would lead to their demise. Stella's gaze swept over the increasing number of hostages. She leaned closer to Shizuku on her left and whispered, "Targeting only women and children, these guys are truly despicable to the extreme." Kurogane Shizuku subtly observed her surroundings, confirming that the terrorists' attention was not yet focused on them, and lowered her voice. "I have a plan, but it requires time to prepare. Before that, please bear with it and don't let them notice us." Apparently, Kurogane's younger sister was unaware of the existence of Murphy's Law. If nothing unexpected happened, then something unexpected was about to happen. A woman suddenly rushed out from the group of hostages, clinging tightly to a terrorist's leg, crying and begging him to spare her child. But the desperado, brainwashed by the New World theory, grinned savagely and kicked the woman away. Seeing this, the child cried out and lunged at the terrorist. The increasingly impatient desperado kicked the charging child away again, then raised his gun and fired. Stella, unable to bear it any longer, acted decisively. Flames surged, melting all the bullets, and she shouted for their leader. However, it was her overly reckless action that made the rebel army's leader realize that a big fish had already taken the bait. "Oh ho, isn't this Princess Stella of the Vermilion Kingdom?" A man in a pitch-black cloak with twisted tattoos on his face slowly emerged from the shadows. He spread his hands, adorned with expensive rings, and performed a clumsy, aristocratic bow. "It is an honor to meet you, Apostle. Smile, salutes you." Stella stared at the pretentious Smile in front of her, frowning and coldly rebuking him. "Are you their leader? Release the hostages immediately, or I will roast all of you right now." At this moment, the two were less than 20 meters apart, and she was confident she could sever his head in an instant. Smile, on the other hand, completely disregarded Stella's threat, and with a mouth full of twisted logic, he raised his pistol and aimed it at the woman from before. On the verge of life and death, Stella had no time to think. With a flick of her hand, Hiryu Zaiken was in her grasp, and she charged towards him like lightning. She never expected this to be the trap Smile had meticulously set for her. He raised his left hand, and a circular shield instantly unfolded. Stella's fierce, flame-clad slash was completely absorbed by it. Immediately after, the ring on Smile's right hand glowed menacingly, and a shockwave containing immense flame magic conduction power slammed directly into Stella's abdomen. "How's that? This is my device, the Archon's ring. Its characteristic is sin and punishment. My left hand absorbs all sins directed at me, and my right hand transforms this power into punishment, returning it all." Smile perfectly demonstrated what it means to be a standard villain during his self-revelation, utterly smug. Stella clutched her agonizing abdomen, struggling to look up. "You mean, I was defeated by my own full power?" "Yes, that's right. I hope this lesson teaches you to think calmly, Vermilion student." Arthur appeared beside Stella, holding the radiant dragon holy sword upside down. He reached out, pulled her up from where she was slumped on the ground, and gently admonished her. Stella's face was full of surprise. "Wait, how did you just come out like that? Isn't that even more reckless than me? So you know you were being reckless." Arthur raised his hand, gesturing for her to look around. "Don't get excited, it's all taken care of. And thank you, you made a good decoy." Only then did Stella and Smile both look around with surprise and suspicion. To their horror, they found that the previously arrogant terrorists were now all collapsed on the ground, with a swirling, pitch-black void beneath each of them. Smile turned to Arthur in disbelief, unable to understand how this person had accomplished such a feat. Such a powerful, restrictive blazer skill. What boring blazer would specifically develop something like that? Ha, ha ha, what a dramatic turn of events. I never thought Hagen Academy would hide a magic conduction genius like you, besides the Princess of Vermilion. Smile tried his best to maintain his affected elegance, raising his hand to display his ring-shaped device, his eyes full of mockery. "Too bad, no matter how strong you are, you'll never break through the Archon's ring's absolute defense." Thunder style, light fang. A flash of lightning instantly pierced the gloom, illuminating the entire hall. Arthur appeared before Smile like a ghost and chuckled. "What defense are you talking about?" Smile, still reveling in his self-satisfaction, only then belatedly heard the thunderous roar in his ears. He slowly looked down at his arm, severed at the root. His hand was gone. "Ah, my hand, why is this happening?" Arthur looked down at Smile, who was writhing on the ground in pain, with a look of distaste. He raised his hand and snapped his fingers. The black hole spell quietly unfolded, and silence returned to the hall. Witnessing even the leader of the terrorists being easily subdued by Arthur, the previously terrified tourists finally dared to shakily stand up. Those who still had their wits about them stepped forward to express their gratitude, but more people frantically rushed towards the department store exit. Stella clutched her abdomen, took 2 steps back, and watched Arthur, who was surrounded by tourists. Her usually spirited head now hung limply, and she murmured softly, "I lost. Vermilion student, Shizuku, are you two all right?" Kurigane Ikki rushed down from upstairs. Seeing that they were both safe, he let out a sigh of relief. Kurigane Shizuku and Arizu Nagi walked side by side. She first glanced at Stella, then spoke in a calm, unruffled tone. "Please rest assured, brother, Alice and I are both unharmed. And, thanks to a certain cow's unauthorized actions, my original plan is also ruined." Stella's eyebrows twitched, and she retorted, "What are you talking about, you washboard?" Seeing this, Kurigane Ikki and Arizu Nagi quickly stepped between the two, acting as peacemakers. "Speaking of which, why hasn't the Academy sent anyone for support yet?" "No, they already sent someone." Arthur, having shaken off the tourists, walked over to the group and gestured for them to look towards the staircase in the hall. A student in a long Hagen Academy uniform, with a casual expression and a playful grin on his face, dispelled his invisibility and sauntered towards them. Oh my, as expected of the Arank Radiant Dragon Holy Sword, it truly is an eye-opener. Arthur gave him an indifferent glance and spoke coolly. Secondeer Kariya Shizuya, you arrived on the scene before Stella even stepped forward, why didn't you act? Hearing this, Kariya Shizuya slapped his thigh and laughed heartily. Isn't that obvious? What would happen if I rashly acted in that situation? That princess has already personally demonstrated it. I was merely waiting for the best moment. Stella's face instantly darkened upon hearing this assessment. Arthur, however, narrowed his eyes, staring at Kariya Shizuya, and scoffed. Leaving aside the fact that you could have easily created a forest large enough to cover all the hostages. The reason you chose to stand by and do nothing is simply because you can't afford to lose, isn't it? Kariya Shizuya's face stiffened. He raised his head and coldly snorted. Boring provocation. I am a representative student of Hagen Academy, how could I possibly lose? Correction, you were only last year's representative student. Arthur raised his hand, interrupting Kariya Shizuya's bragging, and stared sharply at this timid, injury-fearing waste. In this year's selection roster is my responsibility. And you are not qualified to be chosen. 0 comments 0 vote, 50. I've finished speaking. Who agrees? Who disagrees? Chapter 50. Now that I have finished speaking, who agrees? Who disagrees? The shopping weekend, enthusiastically hosted by the rebel army, concluded with a clamor, and the gates of Hagen Academy reopened. Announcement messages flickered on mobile terminals, and all students surged like a tide toward the auditorium where the opening ceremony had been held. Today was the crucial moment to re-announce the format of the internal selection battles. Arthur and his group did not follow the crowd through the main entrance but instead took a staff passage, arriving at the backstage area in advance. Tuka, as the student council president, had already arrived and was waiting with all the student council members. Welcome, everyone. For the time to come, please lend us your guidance. Tuka bowed gracefully and courteously, and the other 4 student council executives also smiled kindly, nodding in greeting. Arthur waved his hand casually and said to the student council members, President, you're too kind. As seniors of the 7-Star Sword Art Festival, we are the ones who need your guidance more. Tuka raised her hand to gently push her thick glasses, nodding with a smile. Then let's support each other. With you all joining this year, Hagen Academy's performance will surely reach new heights. Kurigane Ikki and the others stood by, observing Arthur and Toka's inspoken understanding. They all wore expressions of confusion. They had only received the message to gather backstage first from their mobile terminals and knew nothing of the inside story. Only Stella knew a little of the inside story. At this moment, her gaze swept over everyone present, deep in thought. Excluding the student council members responsible for backstage work, there were herself, Arthur, Kurigane Ikki, Kurigane Shizuku, Tuka, and Araizu Nagi. Exactly 6 people. At this moment, the students of Hagen Academy had mostly gathered in the auditorium, and the bustling sound of voices, though muffled by soundproofing, faintly reached the backstage. The selection for the 7-Star Sword Art Festival is finally starting. Why are you so excited? Do you really think you, a rank D, can be selected? Shut up. This year isn't using ability values as the selection criteria, so maybe I really can get in. Heh, if you can get in, then all of us can get in. Exactly. Hey, fight me after school if you dare. Arthur listened to the increasingly boisterous clamor outside, his gaze sweeping across the entire backstage area, and asked. Where's the chairwoman? At an occasion like this, she wouldn't be late, would she? Tuka gave a slightly awkward smile and explained. The committee has quite a few reservations about the new internal selection system, and the chairwoman is currently dealing with it. Saying that, she raised her hand and lightly patted her ample chest, as if cheering herself on, and said with renewed vigor. The upcoming briefing will be hosted by me. A moment later, Tuka walked onto the podium with steady steps. Seeing the student council president take the stage, the students in the auditorium quieted down, holding their breath and waiting for her to speak. Tuka was composed and poised. After adjusting the microphone, she spoke in a serious and earnest tone. Good morning, everyone. I am Tuka, a third-year student and the student council president of Hagen Academy. I believe you all know that today we have gathered all students to select the representatives for the 7-Star Sword Art Festival. Now, I will introduce the 6 main representatives to you all. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire hall erupted in an uproar. Did I hear that right? The student council president said she's going to directly introduce the main representatives. That's what she said, but why, exactly? Didn't they say they were implementing a new system this year? Directly appointing the main representatives, isn't that just going back to the old ways? Did the chairwoman buckle under the committee's pressure? Shish, keep it down. Do you want to die? The auditorium instantly became a torrent of discussion, and even Tuka, holding a microphone, found it difficult to suppress the surging noise. Boom! A powerful and unparalleled surge of magical power suddenly emanated from the backstage area, and an invisible pressure instantly seized everyone's hearts. The previously boisterous human voices abruptly ceased. The students were as if choked by an invisible giant hand, instantly falling silent, and fearful gazes collectively shot towards the podium. Scarlet magical particles emanated from Arthur's body. He walked step by step in front of Tuka, his eyes signaling her to move aside. He stepped onto the podium, took the microphone, tapped it twice, and spoke with a voice like a booming bell. If you've had enough of arguing, then listen carefully. The main representatives have been decided, a total of 6 people. They are: 3rd year class 3, Tuka; 1st year class 1, Arthur Pendragon; 1st year class 1, Stella Vermilion; 1st year class 1, Kurogane Ikki; 1st year class 4, Kurogane Shizuku; 1st year class 4, Arizu and Nagi. I've said my piece. Who approves? Who objects? In an instant, the magical pressure suddenly dissipated. Only then did the students in the auditorium feel as if they had been granted a great pardon, lowering their heads and exchanging uncertain glances. After hearing the list of main representatives announced by Arthur, to say that all students had no objections would be pure fantasy. Tuka, who had represented the academy twice and almost defeated the 7-star Sword King last year, her strength was beyond doubt, and her selection as a main representative was natural. The power of the 2 newly promoted rank A knights was unfathomable, and their qualification as main representatives was also reasonable. No one would be foolish enough to provoke them. Kurogane Shizuku, 3rd in the freshman assessment and a rare rank B knight, her selection as a main representative was still understandable. But, what about the other 2? Arizu and Nagi, an obscure, unknown figure whom no one had heard of before. Kurogane Ikki, an rank F student who was nicknamed the Failure Knight, due to his repeated failures. How could 2 people like them be selected as main representatives? Just as everyone, terrified of Arthur, was silent, Kiriya Shizuya, his face full of resentment, suddenly raised his arm and shouted sharply. I object. Seeing everyone's gaze converge on him, his expression grew even more smug. He suddenly straightened his back and pointed directly at Stella and the others who were filing out from backstage. No, more accurately, his finger was fixed on Kurogane Ikki. Kurogane Ikki is in rank F, that's something everyone knows. What right does he have to represent the academy in battle? Even if this year isn't based on ability values, what right does a mere failure knight have to be selected? Arthur looked down at Kiriya Shizuya, who was inciting public anger like a clown, his eyes slightly narrowed, his tone calm and unruffled. If you have an opinion, don't just talk. I'll give you a chance. From today onwards, the main representatives will openly accept challenges from all students. Among you, whoever believes they are stronger than the 6 of us, just come. The winner goes up, the loser goes down. If you win, the main position is yours. Hearing this, Kiriya Shizuya could not hide the joy in his eyes. He unhesitatingly pointed at Kurogane Ikki and hissed in a low growl. Very well, I'm going to challenge Kurogane Ikki right now. Immediately. This clown, who thought he had victory in his grasp, was completely unaware that Arthur was looking down at him with an expression that seemed to say, what a perfect straight man to my comedy. Behind Arthur, Kurogane Ikki stood as firm as a mountain, his gaze calm yet burning like a great sun, his aura restrained yet subtly sharp, making it impossible for others to meet his gaze. Pensipton itu sulit, duking aku, voting untuk aku. The Creator 223 creators, thoughts. 2 comments 0 vote, 51. Undercurrents surge. The committee's murderous intentions begin to emerge. Chapter 51. Undercurrents surge. The committee's murderous intentions begin to emerge. 4th arena. In the dense forest, scorching flames transformed into a wheel of death, charging forward ferociously. Sun breathing. 6th form. Burning bone, scorching sun. Wherever it passed, hard wooden stakes shattered, and charred debris flew everywhere. Kirihara Shizuya, with no way to evade, even threw away his bow and arrow device, desperately rolling on the ground, crying out with all his might. "Wait, stop, please stop, I'm going to die, don't come near me, I'm afraid of pain." Thud, Kurogane Ikki cleanly knocked out Kirihara Shizuya with the back of his sword. His chest rose and fell slightly as he tried to calm his increasingly chaotic magic conduction, his eyes gleaming with uncontrollable joy. Undoubtedly, he had grown stronger. Even without relying on the life-risking Itoshira, the sword techniques taught by Arthur alone were enough to defeat his former strong enemy. With this thought, he couldn't help but look up into the distance. That was the direction of the other arenas. Compared to himself, who lacked magic knight talent, what kind of earth-shattering power would Arthur's Itoshira unleash? Speaking of which, is there really anyone in this academy who could push that guy to the point of needing to use Itoshira to fight for his life? Second arena. Arthur's opponent was a lively and cheerful student council executive. Unlike the duel between Kurogane Ikki and Kirihara Shizuya, which was filled with intense personal grudges, their match was more like a friendly match, or rather, a one-sided performance, aimed at showcasing the main representative's strength. Rabbit Maru Renren, nicknamed Speed Addict, moved with the wind under her feet, her figure darting like lightning, not daring to stop for a moment. However, her face, which always wore a confident smile, was now filled with horror. In her perception, it felt as if what was chasing her was not a human, but a ferocious beast preying on humans. Her proud Blazefield art, extreme desire, allowed her speed to continuously stack. As long as she wasn't intercepted by an enemy midway, at her peak charge, she was even confident in dodging Tudo Toka's ultimate drawing slash, known as Reikiri. But at this moment, even though Rabbit Maru Renren's speed had reached its limit, the terrifying oppressive feeling behind her remained like a shadow, pressing in like a dragon's fangs. "Cannot stop, absolutely cannot stop, once I stop, I will instantly lose. It seems this is your limit of speed." A calm voice suddenly sounded in her ear. Rabbit Maru Renren, who had long given up on the idea of winning and was only relying on her indomitable will to desperately hold on, hoping to delay a little longer, suddenly froze. Arthur, who had been relentlessly pursuing her, had somehow caught up and was now running alongside her, even sporting a light, carefree smile on his face. Rabbit Maru Renren, ideographic period. I'm tired, let's just get it over with, quickly. Thunder style, Light Fang. A brilliant bolt of lightning ripped through the sky, and Rabbit Maru Renren felt a jolt throughout her body, collapsing to the ground limply, gasping for breath. I surrender. So, is this the desperate feeling those people had when they fought me on a daily basis? This is too awful. Arthur raised an eyebrow slightly, a hint of playfulness in his tone, and suggested. Actually, you could consider studying the internal magic conduction. It can effectively compensate for your shortcomings in attack. Relying solely on speed won't win against truly strong enemies. Upon hearing this, Rabbit Maru Renren showed a thoughtful expression and lowered her head in contemplation. Arthur, meanwhile, cast his gaze around the arena, observing the battle situations of the others. Indeed, because the second arena was more spacious, Stella and the others were also here, facing continuous attacks from various challengers. The result, naturally, was an undisputed victory for all of them. Aside from Nagi Arisuin, who faced a crank knight and had some dust on his uniform, looking a bit disheveled, the others hadn't even broken a sweat. Honestly, I'm starting to admire your acting skills, Arisoenkin. Arthur narrowed his eyes, his gaze subtly sweeping over Nagi Arisuin, while also listening to the rising and falling discussions among the students in the stands. As expected, the main representatives are indeed the main representatives, they're not so easily shaken. Exactly, even the student council executives all lost, they're ridiculously strong. Did you hear? In the fourth arena, that fallen knight won, and it was a complete victory. That can't be true, can it? Kuryakin was a representative student last year, wasn't he? Why would I lie to you? The news club is already itching to make this the top campus headline and publicize it widely. Upon hearing this, Arthur's lips curved into a cold arc, and he muttered softly. The news has spread, I hope those short-sighted guys don't interfere with my plan. Chairwoman's office. Shinguji Kurono, forcing herself to be energetic, saw off the old foxes from the committee, wearily took half a puff of a cigarette, then fiercely snuffed it out. Bang! She slammed her hands on the desk, looking as if she wanted to flip it over, but then hesitated, considering the trouble of cleaning up afterward, feeling utterly frustrated. Damn it, I'm so fed up. Back when I was dominating the Coke League, which bastard dared to tell me what to do? Now I'm stuck as this damn chairwoman, having to argue with a bunch of fat-bellied politicians every day. I'll argue your motherfucking ass off. After venting her profanity, Shinguji Kurono managed to calm her turbulent emotions. She took 2 deep breaths, tidied up the scattered documents on her desk, and opened her computer's email. A new email from the Student Council. Main representative slots remain unchanged, all successfully defended their positions. Seeing this brief message, Shinguji Kurono's gloomy expression finally eased a bit, making all her hard work during this period worthwhile. Creak. The office door was pushed open, and Saikyo Nene, wearing wooden clogs, walked in with graceful sway. Little Kuro, you kept such an interesting thing from me. Shinguji Kurono let out an exhausted sigh, leaned back in her office chair, and raised a hand to her forehead. I'm begging you, just be quiet for a while. I don't have the energy to play with you right now. Saikyo Nene unfolded her fan, chuckled lightly, and teased. What a pity. If I could record this disheveled appearance of the International Alliance's third-ranked, Lord World Clock, it would surely fetch a good price. Shinguji Kurono pouted dismissively, scoffing coldly. I retired a long time ago. The current third-ranked is you, Miss Yasha Princess. After an exchange of routine teasing, Saikyo Nene dropped her playful demeanor, her expression turned serious, and she said in a deep voice. What you are doing now is tantamount to dancing on the edge of a cliff. Shinguji Kurono lit another cigarette, the swirling smoke blurring her expression, and her voice became somewhat indistinct. The original plan was to announce it a month before the 7-Star Sword Art Festival began. However, an unmanageable troublemaker completely disrupted my plans and openly pushed that Kurogane Iki boy to the forefront. I hope the Kurogane family doesn't go too far. Because right now, I also have a belly full of anger with nowhere to vent. International Alliance Izumo branch, Kurogane Gen, who was always serious and stern, put down the documents he had just finished reviewing. He looked up at Akaza, who was across from him, corpulent and with an oily smile. You're saying Kurogane Iki has become a main representative of Hagen Academy? Akaza nodded and bowed profusely. That is indeed the case. I just received a confidential message from within Hagen Academy. Although I don't know what that Shinguji Kurono woman is planning, Kurogane Iki, he. No need to say more. Kurogane General raised a hand to stop Akaza from continuing, then crossed his hands, assuming a classic superior's posture, and ordered in a voice devoid of any emotion. Go tell the chairwoman of Hagen Academy to remove Kurogane Iki from the representative team. Tell her it's my order. Akaza's eyes darted around, and he feigned difficulty, saying, This, I'm afraid it might be inappropriate. News from the committee indicates that Shinguji Kurono seems to have delegated the final decision-making power for the selection to a new student. A new student? Kurogane General frowned slightly, then relaxed, his tone resolute and allowing no room for argument. It doesn't matter who it is, deal with them both, along with Kurogane Iki. Yes. 0 comments 0 vote. 52. Threatened by obese politicians. We'll teach you a lesson. Chapter 52. The threat of an obese politician. I'll teach you a lesson right here. Days passed, and the number of battles erupting in Hagen Academy's arena grew fewer. After repeated practical combat, even the most stubborn students gradually realized the strength of the main representatives. Arthur and the others received challenges from students of different ranks and grades every day, and they never lost. The students acknowledged the 6 individuals, confident that they could bring back the long-absent 7-Star Sword King trophy for Hagen Academy. Just as the campus was harmonious due to this shared expectation, undercurrents from the outside world had already surged, bringing new pressure. Inside the campus cafe, Arthur arrived for a meeting at the committee's invitation. As he stepped into the suite, where lazy blues music drifted, a figure as plump as a pig, exuding the stench of money, came into view. It was Akaza. Welcome, welcome, you must be Hagen's most renowned Radiant Dragon Holy Sword. Please, have a seat, what would you like to drink? Akaza's face, full of fat, squeezed out a seemingly warm smile, his voice oily. Arthur acted as if he didn't see the person, walked straight to the seat opposite Akaza, glanced at the bar, and spoke in a flat tone. I'll have a Darjeeling, then. Akaza scrutinized the calm and composed young man before him, who showed no signs of shyness. A nearly imperceptible hint of mockery flashed in his small eyes behind his sunglasses. Of course, I didn't expect Arthur to have such an interest in beverages. As long as it's drinkable, plain boiled water is fine, Arthur said, taking the Darjeeling from the waiter and sniffing it lightly. It smelled good, but it wasn't the taste he remembered. Let's get straight to the point, Mr. Akaza. Arthur put down his teacup and looked directly at the other party, who wore a fake smile. As a high-ranking member of the committee, what do you specifically want to discuss with me? Of course, Akaza's fleshy face pulled into a smile he thought was amiable but was, in fact, extremely ugly. Actually, our committee is particularly concerned about the 7-Star Sword Art Festival, so we are collecting the basic information of each academy's representatives in advance, but... Akaza grinned widely, revealing a mouth full of yellowed teeth, his smile appearing increasingly hideous in Arthur's eyes. But we found that Arthur's basic information seems to have some, well, not insignificant problems. After I learned of this situation, I rushed to Hagen Academy immediately, hoping that Arthur could provide us with a reasonable explanation. Arthur took a sip of tea, a faint, unreadable smile playing on his lips. Understanding dawned on him. So that's it, they plan to play this game. Was his basic information problematic? Naturally, it was, as he hadn't filled in his nationality. But such minor details were utterly insignificant. Unless the high-ranking officials of the Ojo branch had collectively lost their minds and intended to surrender a promising rank A knight to another country for a trivial reason. So Arthur was not in a hurry at all. He leisurely savored the Darjeeling in his cup, waiting for Akaza to continue his clown-like performance. His composure, however, was interpreted by Akaza as feigned calmness. The latter immediately put on a smile that suggested everything was under his control and said, "How troublesome. It seems Arthur finds it difficult to answer this question. However, our committee is not so pedantic. As long as Arthur can help solve a small matter, then everything can be discussed further." Arthur put down his teacup, the hint of mockery in his smile deepening. He spoke unhurriedly. "Let me guess, the small matter you want me to resolve is probably to expel Kurogane Ikki from Hagen's representative team, right?" Akaza's smile suddenly froze, and a clear look of surprise appeared in his eyes. When he looked up at Arthur again, it was as if he was looking at a high and mighty judge. A sudden sense of panic rose in his heart, and he quickly interjected. "That's right, if Arthur is willing to abandon Kurogane Ikki, then he will be a friend of our committee forever." Arthur's tone was light, as if he were making a harmless joke. "What if I don't want to be friends with you?" Akaza's brows instantly furrowed, his voice suddenly rising as he sternly shouted. "Then we must seriously review your basic information. If the circumstances are severe, expulsion from school and deportation are all possible." Upon hearing this, Arthur couldn't help but laugh, shaking his head repeatedly. Expulsion, deportation. He stood up from his chair, looking down at the corpulent Akaza and the group of blazers trailing behind him. Boom! The air suddenly trembled, and scarlet magical power, as if substantial, transformed into a swirling tornado connecting heaven and earth. Amidst the raging winds, the furnishings in the cafe shook violently, and the ceiling and floor groaned under the strain, teetering on the verge of collapse. Akaza and the others, who were closest, their legs giving way under the terrifying pressure, collapsed miserably onto the ground. Almost at the same time, sensing this overwhelmingly powerful magical energy fluctuation, all the teachers and students within Hagen Academy looked up in astonishment, their eyes fixed on the direction of the cafe. This magical power, is it Arthur's brother? Is it those rebel guys again? That guy's magical power, is it really higher than mine? Oh my, this is no joke. Who pissed off that silver-haired brat? Shinguji Kurono glared irritably at Saikyo Nene, who was beside her, seemingly eager for chaos. She quickly pulled out her long-unused noble phantasm, and with a flash of her figure, she shot out of the chairwoman's office like an arrow. Saikyo Nene let out a series of strange chuckles, and with a shift of her feet, she transformed into a blurred phantom, following closely behind. In the cafe, Arthur looked down at Akaza and the others, who were completely suppressed by his colossal magical storm, unable to even catch their breath. The other party's face turned from white to green, then from green to purple, yet they couldn't even squeeze out a single word of plea. Fools are indeed good at making people laugh. As long as I am here, Hagen Academy will be the champion. I will be the 7-Star Sword King. Do you think the Alliance would abandon a rank A knight for the few slanderous words of a fat, short-sighted politician like you? As he spoke, Arthur slowly walked up to Akaza, who was sweating profusely and trembling like a sieve. His gaze was as cold as if he were examining a dead pig on a cutting board, considering where the best place to cut would be. The school-wide, heart-stopping magical storm gradually subsided. Akaza, still on the ground, was reluctantly helped up by his subordinates. His legs continued to tremble violently and uncontrollably, and a dark wet patch was faintly visible on his crotch. Arthur waved his hand impatiently, as if shooing away flies, and sneered. Truly an eyesore. Get lost, you scum. Akaza, thoroughly terrified, dared not utter even a single harsh word of defiance. He and his equally disoriented followers fled the cafe in a panic. Arthur walked to the cafe bar, gently tapped the counter with his finger, signaling the waiter, who had been quite frightened, to come out. I'm sorry, I scared you just now. He handed over his mobile device and tapped it twice. This is compensation for the shop. The Darjeeling was very good. Goodbye. After completing the transfer, Arthur walked out of the cafe without looking back. When he came out of the cafe, he saw Shinguji Kurono from afar, holding cool-looking magical twin guns and exuding a sharp, murderous aura, rushing towards him at an astonishing speed. Kid, where are they? Her voice arrived before she did. I want to see which fool dares to come to my Hagen Academy to seek death. Arthur quickly raised his hand, signaling the chairwoman, who was clearly on the verge of a rampage and possibly in early menopause, to calm down. He explained softly. Don't be impulsive, chairwoman. I just met with those guys from the committee. As you can see, the process wasn't very pleasant. The committee, Shinguji Kurono's murderous aura instantly solidified a few more points. She gritted her teeth and squeezed out 2 words. Akaza. Arthur nodded with a smile. It was indeed that fat guy. He tried to use my identity information as blackmail, either to make Kurogane Ikki withdraw from the competition or to make me withdraw from school. Upon hearing this, Shinguji Kurono was so angry she laughed. Ha, they really dared to think that. Where are those lawless bastards? Arthur pointed casually in the direction they had left, teasingly. You're too late. They all tucked tail and ran. Hearing this, Shinguji Kurono felt a significant easing of the anger in her chest. She patted Arthur's shoulder with a look of relief, encouraging him with a smile. Well done, kid, don't worry, I've got your back at Hagen Academy. Once you gloriously win the title of 7-star Sword King, those clowns like Akaza won't dare to do anything to you. Arthur's eyes narrowed slightly, a sharp glint flashing within them. He replied seemingly carelessly. Thank you for your kindness, but I don't have the habit of being provoked and not retaliating. The second phase of the plan needs to be moved up. Shinguji Kurono was startled at first, then completely let go. She spread her hands, making an expression of, it has nothing to do with me, do as you please. All right, you call the shots. If you need support, just say so. I want to see what kind of commotion you're going to stir up this time. 0 comments 0 vote, 53. There is no such thing as coincidence when it comes to Black Roses Under the Moon. Chapter 53. Black Rose Under the Moon, there is no such coincidence. The day after the committee and others left, Shinguji Kurono issued a new announcement within Hagen Academy. The main representative challenge matches will conclude at the end of this month, and after the deadline, no teachers or students may raise objections to the selection results. This announcement did not cause much stir among the students. Elite students who were confident in their strength had already attempted to challenge the main representatives, all ending in failure. The remaining ordinary students also knew their limits and would not seek trouble. However, just as everyone thought the main representative battles had been settled, on the last day of the month's challenge matches, Nagi Arisuin was defeated. His opponent was the student council accountant, a rank B knight known as the Scarlet Lady, Tudokubara Kanata. As a combat-oriented individual who had been specially recruited to the battlefield as a student, her strength was beyond doubt. Therefore, the students were not surprised by her victory over the rank D Nagi Arisuin. That night, Nagi Arisuin sat by the window of his dormitory, gazing at the bright, flawless moon in the sky, lost in thought. Kurogane Shizuku, his roommate, pushed the door open and asked softly. Are you all right, Alice? Nagi Arisuin turned around, a gentle smile still on his face, and explained. I'm sorry to make you worry, I'm fine. Kurogane Shizuku saw that her friend's expression was normal, and her tone carried a hint of regret. It's good that you're fine. But it's really a shame, we were so close to being able to participate in the competition together. Nagi Arisuin quickly waved his hand, a wry smile on his face, showing lingering fear. There's nothing to be done about it, after all, the opponent is a rank B combatant, I was already using all my strength just to dodge her attacks. Noticing Nagi Arisuin's low spirits, Kurogane Shizuku said no more, instead pulling him to talk about intimate topics between girls. For example, how to win over her own brother. The moon hung high in the sky, and all was silent. Nagi Arisuin's figure, like a dark shadow, silently slipped out of the dormitory building. Upon reaching the academy's outskirts, he turned his head, his eyes complex as he looked back in the direction of Kurogane Shizuku's dormitory. Farewell, Shizuku, if you're so reluctant, why not just stay put? In the quiet of the night on the academy's outskirts, a figure with arms crossed leaned against a tree. Arthur, who had appeared at some unknown time, blocked his path. Nagi Arisuin instinctively drew his dark hermit, but when he saw who the newcomer was, a bitter smile spread across his lips. Arthur stepped out from the shadow of the tree, looking at Nagi Arisuin, who was tense and constantly on guard against him, and shook his head, teasing. Good evening, Arisuin, not sleeping so late, where are you planning to go for a walk? Nagi Arisuin's eyes were dim, he shook his head, and asked directly. Don't beat around the bush, Arthur, how did you know I would be leaving tonight? Snap. Arthur raised his hand and snapped his fingers, a cluster of fluorescent light brightened on the back of Nagi Arisuin's right hand, continuously emitting faint magical fluctuations. A little trick for tracking, nothing worth mentioning. Nagi Arisuin stared at his glowing right hand, recalling the scene of their handshake when they first met, and the bitterness on his lips grew stronger. You suspected me from our first meeting. Why? Arthur shrugged subtly, pulled out his mobile device from his pocket, and explained. At first, I didn't think much of it, I just thought Arisuin liked to hide his true abilities. But I once asked the chairwoman to collect information on all participants, and I must say, the quality of this year's freshmen is surprisingly high. Besides our Hagen Academy, other academies also have talented newcomers emerging. Don't you find that strange? Nagi Arisuin replied with a fake smile, perhaps it's just a coincidence. Arthur scoffed, too many coincidences are no longer coincidences. Are you going to confess yourself, or? Blazingsword art. Shadow Stitch. Under the moonlight, the mottled tree shadows suddenly twisted and danced, pouncing at Arthur with bared fangs and claws. Nagi Arisuin himself slashed his sword at his feet, a crack appearing, attempting to escape into a secret passage of light and shadow. Sun form. Red dragon. The fire dragon roared, and a scorching light descended like the sun, instantly dispelling the shadows and interrupting the spread of the crack. Nagi Arisuin, whose escape had failed, only heard a whooshing sound approaching. Relying solely on instinct, he horizontally parried with his sword, barely blocking Arthur's powerful, heavy flame slash. I'm just a hired assassin, completely unaware of the subsequent plans. Keeping me won't do you any good. Arthur continued to exert force, pressing Nagi Arisuin to his knees, and quipped. If every random assassin had the strength of a rank A knight, then the International Alliance should have disbanded long ago. Nagi Arisuin realized that Arthur had no intention of letting him go, so he immediately freed one hand and slammed it heavily onto the overlapping shadows of the two of them. Blazingsword art. Twin shadows. A strong gust of wind whistled up from beneath Arthur. He didn't hesitate for a moment, flashing back quickly. He focused his gaze on the two dark shadows standing beside Nagi Arisuin, one of which held a broadsword, its wind pressure fierce. That's interesting, not only his own shadow, but he can also replicate the opponent's shadow. Nagi Arisuin had no time to respond, he was currently half-kneeling on the ground, gasping for breath. Replicating Arthur's shadow consumed far more than expected, instantly draining his magic power. However, the effect of twin shadows was trustworthy, as long as the two shadows could stall the opponent for a moment, he would be able to escape safely. Clang! A section of a dark broken blade spun and plunged into the ground beside Nagi Arisuin. The sound of breaking wind followed, and the two shadows flew back like broken kites, falling heavily to the ground and dissipating. Arthur held his holy sword upside down, clicked his tongue, his tone carrying a hint of something inexplicable. What a pity, Arisuin. It seems neither I nor this holy sword are so easily replicated. Nagi Arisuin wiped the sweat from his forehead, looked at Arthur, who was still unharmed, dropped his dark hermit, and raised his hands. I surrender, my magic power is exhausted, you don't have to worry about me playing any more tricks. Arthur raised his hand and snapped his fingers again. A black hole spell unfolded, firmly pinning Nagi Arisuin to the ground. His tone relaxed. I'm afraid I can't comply. After all, I don't have a habit of trusting enemies. Saying that, he pulled out his mobile device, which had remained connected, and asked. I'm done here, chairwoman, how much longer until you arrive? Whoosh, Shinguji Kurono, dressed in high-grade silk pajamas, her clothes fluttering, arrived through the air. She coldly scanned Nagi Arisuin, who was sprawled on the ground, her voice low. Are you sure, Arisuin, is he really a rank A knight? Do I have any reason to lie to you? You'll know all these things once you take him back and interrogate him. Arthur put away his mobile device, turned, and leisurely walked towards the dormitory building. I'll leave the rest to you, chairwoman. Good night. You damn brat, Shinguji Kurono cursed softly, looking at Nagi Arisuin on the ground, her gaze growing more serious. A rank A knight disguised and infiltrated Hagen Academy, the conspiracy behind it was likely far beyond imagination. This murky situation might be even deeper than she had anticipated. 54. The Training Camp Turmoil, the Favor of the Special Training Instructor. Chapter 54. Camp Turmoil, the Favor of the Special Training Instructor. A medium-sized bus drove smoothly along the tree-lined forest road. Arthur flipped through a travel guide, discussing the upcoming play plans with Fu in a low voice. Stella, beside him, seemed a bit distracted, occasionally glancing at the Kurigane siblings in the back row of the bus. Her expression, a mix of eagerly anticipating plot development and fearing the situation might get out of control, was truly amusing. Mifune Ayas, the vice president of the student council, held a guide flag and spoke with enthusiasm. Everyone, in about 15 minutes, we will arrive at our training camp location. Tudo and Kasaragi have already gone ahead to make arrangements, so we can go straight up the mountain. Stella scratched her cheek apologetically and nodded. It's a bit embarrassing to trouble them to prepare everything beforehand, I feel a little bad about it. Mifune Ayas smiled kindly and waved her hand. Don't worry about it, this place is originally Kasaragi's family property and often serves as a holiday spot for the student council, so it does need to be tidied up first. Stella gave an awkward smile, reluctantly agreeing. Is that so? Arthur closed the travel guide, giving a sidelong glance at Stella, whose expression was extremely unnatural, and teased. I've noticed you've been restless since we got on the bus. What exactly are you worrying about? Nothing at all. Stella's cheeks instantly flushed red, and her flame magic conduction power uncontrollably leaked out as she frantically waved her hands in denial. It's just a training camp stay. Being ambushed in my sleep or something, I wasn't thinking about those shameless things. Arthur nodded silently, although he was somewhat curious about the target of Stella's imagined night attack, considering safety issues. He decided not to provoke this truck, which could explode at any moment, for now. Mountaintop Mansion. Arthur and the others, who had just put down their luggage, didn't even have time to meticulously examine the luxurious residence before being summoned back to the main hall. Everyone stood in a line, waiting for the arrival of the KOK League Professional Magic Knight and Special Training Instructor. According to Shinguji Kurono, this person was a top-tier expert ranked among the best in Koke League competitions, more than capable of guiding a group of students like them. A moment later, under the expectant gazes of the students, a woman dressed in a loose kimono gracefully walked in. It was Saikyo Nene. She enthusiastically raised her hand in greeting. Good morning, little ones. I am your special training instructor for this period, Saikyo Nene. Think carefully about how you should address me. Saikyo Nene, isn't that the Yasha princess, ranked 3rd in the Koke League? It is her. It seems the chairwoman's connections are indeed unfathomable. Who is she? Do you all know her? As expected, a big chest, no brain cow. Do you want to fight? Washboard. Listening to the low but still clearly audible discussions of the surrounding classmates, Tudo Tuka, who was usually serious, showed a helpless expression and stepped forward to persuade. Senior Sister Nin, please be serious. Senior Sister. Everyone's gaze collectively turned to Tudo Tuka, never having imagined she had such a connection with the famous Yasha princess. Saikyo Nene opened her iron fan, fanning herself unhurriedly, and replied. How am I not serious? Not only you, but I have also been keeping an eye on the situation of these little ones." As she spoke, her gaze swept over the students present one by one, finally resting on Arthur, who appeared composed. "Little Arthur," Saikyo Nene's lips curved into a slight smile, "I heard from little Ku-chan, cough. I heard the chairwoman mention that you also seem to be able to control gravity." Control gravity? Arthur's eyes flickered, and the public information of this Coke League's current third-ranked expert quickly flashed through his mind. Name: Saikyo Nene. Affiliation: Coca Rank League. Blazer Rank: A. Inherent Armament: Iron Fan Crimson Phoenix. Ability: Natural Interference System Controlling Gravity. Blazer Secret Arts: Earth Binding Array, Forbidden Art Overlord Heavenly Star. Title: Yasha Princess. Attack Power: A. Defense Power: A. Magic Power: A. Magic Conduction Control: E. Physical Ability: A. Luck: A. Arthur then remembered that he had performed the black hole spell in front of Shinguji Kurono not long ago. That was not gravity control, but a magic conduction that simulated an ultradense gravitational field. He figured Shinguji Kurono was not very proficient in it, leading to a slight cognitive deviation in her retelling. However, Arthur could indeed create neutron stars or white dwarfs with astonishing gravity, so saying he could control gravity was not wrong. Arthur calmly responded, "I know a little. Does Teacher Psycho have any instructions?" Saikyo Nene chuckled upon hearing this, looking Arthur up and down with great interest, her eyes full of admiration. Nothing. I have high hopes for you in the upcoming special training." "Thank you." Arthur did not feel any ominous premonition, merely assuming this Yasha princess was naturally like this, and did not delve deeper. He stepped out of the line, looked at the others who were already poised and ready to throw themselves into special training, and said loudly, "For the next month, we will complete the second phase of special training here. I hope no one falls behind, otherwise missing the third phase would be too regrettable." Stella was completely confused and quickly raised her hand to ask, "What is the third phase? Doesn't normal special training usually last until the 7-Star Sword Art Festival is about to begin?" Arthur's lips curved into a playful arc, and he nodded, saying, "That's right, normally it is. But when did I say this special training was normal? Listen up, 1 month from now, we will go to the other 6 academies for harmonious and friendly interschule exchange activities. Everyone, Sigma degree, challenging other schools." Arthur reached up to rub his ear, explaining nonchalantly, "Why are you so excited? Who stipulated that we must wait until the 7-Star Sword Art Festival to make a move? Hagen Academy has always upheld the philosophy of learning from each other and progressing together. Is it not permissible to proactively get closer to the other 6 schools and foster friendship?" Everyone had a subtle expression of wanting to speak but stopping, then wanting to speak again. They vaguely felt Arthur's words were pure sophistry, but upon closer thought, they couldn't seem to find any logical flaws. Saikyo Nene, on the side, smiled pleasantly, finding Arthur more and more agreeable the more she looked at him. She secretly thought this kid was definitely just like her. Stella, whose combat desire was the most fervent, was the first to snap back to reality. Her fists clenched, her fighting spirit high. "That's right. Anyway, we'll have to compete against other academies at the 7-Star Sword Art Festival sooner or later, so exchanging now, it's no big deal." Inspired by Stella, everyone also cheered up, preparing to fully commit to the upcoming hellish special training. Arthur gazed at Stella, who always maintained this rare optimism, pondered for a moment, and then spoke. "I don't dislike your attitude, but Stella, before you officially start special training, you first need to learn how to use your power correctly." Stella was slightly stunned and quickly retorted, "What do you mean by that? Is there something wrong with my power?" Facing the still bewildered Stella, Arthur gave up on gentle persuasion and chose the most direct method, revealing the truth clearly, word by word. "Of course, it's wrong. You are not a natural interference system blazer at all. Within your body, a dragon resides. 0 comments 0 vote. 55. The princess bathes in fire, and the dragon's might begins to show. Chapter 55. The princess bathes in fire, and the dragon's might begins to emerge. The training ground's air was thick with the impending duel. Kurigane Ikki and the others held their breath at the edge, their gazes fixed on Arthur and Stella, who stood facing each other in the arena. After Arthur revealed that Stella's power was not natural interference, but a more profound conceptual interference, a practical battle aimed at awakening the dormant dragon was imminent. At this moment, Stella's face was still a mix of disbelief and a hint of bewilderment. I've had my ability for so long, yet I've never truly touched its core. She looked at Arthur, her eyes filled with a touch of urgency and confusion. What should I do? Can simply fighting you awaken my true power? Arthur's lips curved into a faint smile, his tone a reassuring, almost coaxing one. Don't be nervous, truly, just one fight with me will be enough. His words were not false, but a judgment Arthur had made after careful consideration. From the first time he met Stella, when she claimed to be a natural interference type, he had sensed something amiss. Her astonishing fiery magic was merely the innate breath of a dragon, a shallow manifestation beneath the surface. As a pioneer in uncovering origins, Arthur could clearly sense the dormant dragon's power within Stella. With the surging magic within him as a catalyst, he would surely be able to help her ignite that sleeping spark. After receiving Arthur's confident reply, Stella took a deep breath. She cast aside the chaotic thoughts in her mind, her eyes suddenly sharpened, and she immersed herself wholeheartedly in the duel before her. She and Arthur had never officially clashed. Although she had admitted to being unprepared during the department store incident, in a true test of strength, the outcome was still unknown. Come and serve me, Hiryu Zaiken. In an instant, a fiery storm rose like a crimson dragon, and a violent heatwave swept across the entire training ground. Stella reached into the scorching core, gripping a magnificent and intricate European broadsword, interwoven with gold and red. Its blade pointed directly at Arthur, radiating fierce battle intent. Arthur felt the scorching battle intent and Stella's resolute determination wash over him, and he couldn't help but let out a low chuckle. Manifest here and conquer, radiant dragon holy sword. He raised his hand with interest, the air hummed, and the sacred sword answered his call. Then, come at me. Before his words had even finished, Stella had already moved. The flames of Hiryu Zaiken surged, and the hard ground of the training field beneath her feet shattered. Her figure shot out like a cannonball, enveloped in irresistible magic, and a heavy slash tore through the air. Arthur neither dodged nor evaded. The airflow around him converged wildly, and the wind pressure on the sacred sword solidified as he bravely met the burning blade. Clang, clang, clang. Galaforce winds and raging flames collided fiercely, and the clang of metal splitting stone and piercing clouds echoed endlessly. Inside the training ground, at times, an uncontrolled flame would splash like a meteor, and at other times, a condensed wind blade would howl out, leaving grotesque marks on the ground. Stella stared at Arthur's still composed expression, her heart tightening as she realized the huge gap in their close combat skills. She stomped her foot abruptly, the ground trembled, and the flames around her, like a veil, surged again. Dragon tremor kick, Hiryu great jaw. The flames on the sword seemed to come alive, transforming into a lifelike fiery dragon that suddenly opened its massive mouth, filled with flaming fangs, and lunged at Arthur with an all-consuming aura. Water form raging scales. Arthur's sword tip twisted, and a water mirror instantly spread. The moment the fiery dragon's massive mouth bit down, it plunged into a bottomless deep sea, stirring up a sky full of steam. Stella only felt a powerful restraint on her sword, which caused her sword-drawing motion to stall. Greatly alarmed, she quickly activated her magic for protection. Countless torrents of water shot out from the steam, but they were all blocked by a layer of joyfully dancing, solid like fiery veil, without a single scratch. This was Stella's proud noble art Hiryu feather robe. Under the protection of this high-temperature holy armor, ordinary attacks could be ignored, allowing her to focus wholeheartedly on offense and killing. Noble art tyrant dragon's roar. Stella's offensive resumed, and the giant dragon, mimicked by flames, soared high. As its wings flapped, countless scorching fire rains poured down, and at the same time, it opened its mouth and spewed out a highly condensed red and white dragon's breath, directly at Arthur. Wind form roar. Arthur's figure remained still, but the surrounding atmosphere vibrated violently under his will. A restless, raging tornado storm suddenly formed, swirling with countless wind blades, like an ancient beast ready to devour, and collided head-on with the red and white dragon's breath. Boom! Wind and fire merged to the extreme, instantly transforming into a destructive fiery tornado that spread wildly in all directions. Wherever it passed, the training ground's surface was completely carbonized, the air twisted, and the heatwave was oppressive. The onlookers at the edge raised their hands to shield themselves from the splashing fire meteors, retreating in horror. Are these two monsters truly going all out? No, Stella and Arthur show no signs of their magic power diminishing. The real intense battle is just beginning. I've never heard of such a huge difference in magic power between a rank A knight and a rank B knight. Forget you youngsters, even this rank A knight, I would never be able to squander magic power like this. The fiery tornado gradually subsided, and as the smoke and dust cleared, everyone immediately focused their gaze on the center of the arena. Arthur's figure transformed into blurry streaks of sky-blue lightning, launching a fierce, storm-like assault around Stella. The princess, who was freely unleashing flames, now found herself completely unable to keep up with her opponent's ghostly explosive power, only able to barely hold on with her Hirayu feather robe. After gritting her teeth and enduring another round of lightning baptism, Stella's eyes were resolute. She raised Hirayu Zaiken and let out a clear shout that echoed throughout the arena. Burning heaven, scorching earth, Dragon King's flame. The next instant, with Stella at the center, countless thick pillars of flame shot skyward, then slammed down like divine punishment, intertwining and merging. The entire training ground quickly twisted and melted under this extreme heat. The aggressive pillars of flame not only instantly forced back the rapidly attacking Arthur but also accumulated a power that seemed to destroy the world as they continuously merged. Clearly, Stella was preparing to unleash an all-out attack. Arthur casually waved away the scorching heatwave that rushed towards him, sensed the unreserved, furiously burning magic power within Stella, and nodded in satisfaction. After a brief charge, Stella suddenly swung her sword. A spiraling column of flames, capable of incinerating all things, sped across the ground, accompanied by deafening explosions, instantly engulfing Arthur's figure completely. Terrifying high-temperature heatwaves raged across the arena. The training ground was already a dark red, and rolling hot air continuously steamed, making everyone's vision increasingly distorted and blurry. Stella leaned on Hirayu Zaiken with both hands, panting heavily, sweat pouring down her face. She stared intently at the pillar of flame that continuously erupted like a volcanic eruption not far away, her eyes filled with apprehension and a faint glimmer of hope. Did I win? Just as Stella's mind relaxed for a moment, a sharp whoosh suddenly echoed throughout the arena. Arthur, completely unharmed, emerged like a ghost from the edge of the flames, appearing before her. His right palm was highly condensed with magic power, carrying an irresistible, immense force, and he struck Stella's chest. Bang! Stella was immediately struck as if by lightning, her body trembled, and the broadsword in her hand flew out. Arthur did not stop. Having landed a hit, he immediately retreated, moving so fast that he left trails of afterimages. By this point in the intense battle, Stella's magic power was more than half depleted, yet her mental will, under extreme pressure, had adjusted to an unprecedented peak state. At this moment, the pure magic power in Arthur's palm, also of the dragon race, exploded within her like a prairie fire. Roar, a deafening roar, as if from primordial antiquity, suddenly echoed through the sky. Even though the onlookers had never heard it before, a thought spontaneously arose in their minds. This is a dragon's roar. Stella, who had fallen to the ground, trembled violently, desperately trying to control the wildly surging, terrifying magic power within her that threatened to tear her apart. Behind her, a massive and majestic crimson dragon's phantom was slowly emerging, bearing its fangs and claws, its dragon's might permeating the air. Arthur observed the increasingly pained expression on her face and reminded her loudly. Feel it, understand it, control it. From now on, it's all up to you, Stella. Stella gritted her teeth, her pretty face contorted in pain, but she couldn't speak in response. She could only nod with difficulty, then closed her eyes, sinking all her mind into her body to engage in a more perilous struggle with the newly awakened dragon's power. Everyone met Arthur, who slowly walked out from the heat haze and dust, but their gazes involuntarily turned to Stella, who was enveloped in surging magic power in the center of the arena. So, Vermilion, is she considered to have successfully awakened now? It looks like, at least, there's no danger to her life. Really? Nothing unexpected will happen, right? Arthur looked relaxed and nodded casually. Don't worry, I just used my own magic power as a catalyst to stimulate her to awaken prematurely. That power originally belonged to her, how could it possibly backfire on its master? Infected by his calm demeanor, everyone's anxious hearts finally settled a little. Then, their faces filled with curiosity and anticipation, they continued to wait at the edge of the training ground. Stella, who had not yet awakened the concept of the dragon, was already a top-tier rank A knight. Once she truly mastered this terrifying power from the depths of her soul, how strong would she become? In the crowd, the well-informed Saikyo Nene's gaze subtly swept over Arthur, her eyes sparkling with unprecedented brilliance. While the students were all focused on Stella's inspiring awakening, she had developed a stronger interest in Arthur. Not only could he manipulate multiple elements at will, but he could even delve into the realm of gravity, and his magic's nature was identical to that of the legendary dragon race. Just what is this kid's background? Saikyo Nene, who had always been playful and had never considered taking on disciples, now found a thought quietly budding in her heart. Perhaps, occasionally trying something she had never done before would also be quite interesting. Her overlord Heavenly Star also seemed to need a suitable successor. To be continued. Thank you all for watching.